The sun had not yet risen above the low eastern hills when Varys emerged from the tunnel beneath the king's wood, robes cinched tight against the pre-dawn chill. A faint grayness clung to the sky, the color of stale milk, leaving the towers of Eris's red keep to brood like serrated shadows over the sleeping city. King's Landing usually breathed even at this hour. Dockhands cursing on the Blackwater, bakeries coughing plumes of warm bread-scented steam. But on this morning, an eerie hush held sway. War pressed its mailed fist against the gates, and every heart within the walls beat to the same whispered cadence of dread. Varys paused beside a stand of black pine and listened. He had the softest steps of any man he knew, learned on Myrish flagstones, and perfected in Lycian pleasure palaces, where a single creak of floorboard might cost a spy his tongue. No footfall followed him now, yet still he waited the count of 20. Paranoia was a habit that saved more lives than any sword. When even the leaves refused to rustle, he lifted an oilskin bundle from beneath a root and tucked it beneath his arm. The bundle's weight was small. What mattered was what it represented. Inside lay a glass vial no longer than a child's thumb, stoppered tight with a bead of soft golden wax, and inside that, well, the contents were beyond price. Fire made flesh. The merchant in Volantis had whispered a year ago, the whites of his eyes shining like candle fat as he named a cost so steep Varys almost laughed in his face. Almost. Yet the spider never laughed at anything that might one day be useful. Gold, secrets, favors owed. He had spent them all to purchase this single dose. A dragon slayer, though it breathed no flame. He smoothed his robes and took a breath sweet with pine sap. 7 hells, he thought. I have taken steps from which there is no return. But the path had been set for him the moment he felt the chill in Eris's voice when the king commanded, "Burn them all." That serpentine whisper had slid between Varys' ribs like an assassin's blade. To let the mad king loose his wildfire would be to birth a nightmare brighter than day, and the city would writhe in green agony while Tywin's lions prowled the gates. There would be no victors, only ashes. The spider preferred silk threads over charred bone. His slippers found the warren of secret passageways, honeycombing the hill beneath the keep. Varys lit no torch. Touch was enough. 5 paces to a fork, right at the flaw in the stone shaped like a tear. 12 more to the spiral stair whose steps had been worn by feet long turned to dust. The air smelled of damp earth and faint rot, yet it felt oddly comforting. Here in the dark, he was himself. Not the master of whisperers, not the king's buffoon, merely a boy who had once crawled beneath a Volantine stage begging for scraps of applause. How far he had traveled, and for what? For peace, he told himself. For order. For the realm that could be. He climbed until the stair opened onto a narrow stone gallery hidden within the thickness of the throne room wall. A slit wider than a dagger's edge let him peer down on iron and shadow. Below, the Iron Throne rose like a frozen wave of metallic fury, 1,000 broken blades fusing into one jagged crown. The hall lay empty, save for a single figure hunched upon that obscene coruscation of steel. King Aerys, his silver-gold hair fallen lank across skin stretched thin as parchment. Even from the gallery the smell of unwashed flesh drifted upward. Sour, acrid, tinged with the coppery bite of scabbed wounds scratched open anew. He mutters to the swords now, Varys reflected. Better companions than any living soul. Aerys rocked gently, narrow shoulders shivering despite the brazier flames guttering near the dais. Under the orange light his eyes jittered, pupils skating across invisible specters. Traitors everywhere, he crooned. Everywhere. I feel them scuttling in the walls, rats with crowns. I burned my hand. I can burn the rest. I will birth a dragon in this hall. Let them taste its breath. Varys's fingers slipped around the vial inside his sleeve. It would take but a single moment to do the deed. The poison was clear as morning dew and tasteless as memory. Mixed into a cup of sweet arbor red, it would glide across the tongue like silk. Aerys would cough perhaps. A cough was unavoidable. Then the throat would close. The heart quicken. The skin flush red. 3 breaths later, The muscles would knot and freeze, the lungs refusing to heed any frantic command. Death would be swift, silent, merciful, compared to wildfire. Yet how to reach the king's lips? Varys had planned every step. The king drank only from chalices poured by Grand Maester Pycelle, but Pycelle had fled to the city walls now, pleading gout and creaking joints to avoid the king's presence. In truth, the gaunt old toad feared the same flames that haunted Varys' darkest dreams. So the duty of serving wine had fallen to a nameless kitchen drudge, who never looked higher than a man's boots. Varys had purchased her silence with coin and threats in equal measure. She would pour the arbor red. He would add what was needed. A soft knock startled him from thought. A golden head appeared on the stair behind. Sir Jaime Lannister, white cloak bright even in the gloom. The boy moved like a cat in armor, quiet as snowfall. Varys' heart jack-hammered against his ribs. Had the gods conspired to damn him? Yet Jaime's face showed only wary curiosity. "Master Varys," the king's guard whispered. "Why are you skulking in shadow while the world trembles?" Lies came easily to the spider, but this boy had eyes like polished mirrors, swallowing untruth. His grace required a draught of dream wine. Varys said lightly, "Grand Maester Pycelle feared the smoke in the passages, so I volunteered." Jaime studied him, brow furrowing. "I heard the king screaming an hour past, something about traitors underfoot. He demanded wildfire. Again, a beat. He frightens the servants. Servants can yet be useful when frightened." Varys shifted, angling his body to hide the vial. "Will you stand guard?" "I always stand guard." It was said without arrogance, merely fact. Jaime moved to the narrow embrasure beside Varys and looked down on the throne room. "I trained my whole life for this duty, yet I was not trained to watch a king unravel." A thin wisp of sympathy curled within Varys' chest. The boy was barely 17, too young for such burdens. But sympathy was a luxury the spider could ill afford. "Some fabrics once frayed cannot be rewoven," he murmured. "All we can do is prevent the thread from catching fire." Jaime's gaze snapped to him. "Is that truly why you creep about? To prevent fire?" "There are," Varys said softly, "many kinds of fire." Below, Aerys clawed at his arms, leaving thin red crescents. The king muttered one name over and again. Rhaella, Rhaella, though the queen was long locked away, sick in body and spirit both. Varys felt the familiar twist of dread. Delay too long, and Tywin would breach the gates. Delay too long, and the Mad King would hurl wildfire into every cellar, every sewer run, turning King's Landing into a pyre. Delay too long, and 500,000 souls would wail beneath the green hell. He turned to Jaime. "There's a wineskin in the anteroom. Fetch it. The king thirsts, though he knows not what he drinks." "And shh." Jaime hesitated, eyes flicking to the sword at Varys' hip. There was no sword, of course. At last he nodded and descended the stair like a wraith. Varys breathed again only when the boy's footfalls faded. He slid from the gallery, velvet slippers whispering over stone, to the service corridor that led to the king's chambers. There, the drudge waited, clutching the skinny neck of a clay jug. Her eyes darted like sparrows. Varys nodded encouragingly. "You've done well. It ends today." She offered the jug, knuckles white. Will it hurt?" "Not him. Not long." He drew a silver pin and flicked the wax top from the vial. A bead of clear liquid shivered at the lip. With steady fingers he let 2 drops fall into the rosy wine. They melted without ripple. "Walk forward when Jaime returns. Pour half the jug into his grace's cup. Bow, back away, and leave by the east door. Do not look back, whatever you hear. And if he sees me." "He will not. The king sees only dragons these days." He gently turned her shoulders, sending her toward the hall. The torch at the corridor bend cast long bars of amber over her homespun smock. "Dick." Varys counted her steps until they vanished in the hush. Silence yawned, vast and absolute. The spider found himself alone with a taste like copper pennies coating his tongue. Strange, how fear and resolve were but shades of the same color. He imagined ashes swirling over cobblestones, pregnant women clawing at their burning bellies, children crying as wildfire devoured their lungs. He breathed that vision in, let it settle like lead in his belly, and felt his knees stiffen with purpose. Jamie returned, wineskin slung over his shoulder. He noticed at once the absence of Jug and Girl. "Quicker than I thought." "When a king commands, his servants obey," Varys answered. He adjusted his purple sleeve to hide the barest smear of gold wax upon his thumb. "Walk with me, sir." Together they crossed into the throne room. The vast doors loomed like the jaws of some dark leviathan, but the hall beyond seemed smaller now, shrunken by the man crouched atop its twisted throne. Aerys's breaths came in ragged gasps. Purple smudges darkened the hollows under his eyes. Dried streaks of drool matted his beard. When the first trickle of wine touched the cup, he seized it greedily, sloshing half across his lap. He gulped, coughed, gulped again. Varys kept his gaze averted, but from the corner of his eye he watched the king's throat bob, watched the pale Adam's apple jerk like a fish caught on a hook. 3 breaths. 4. Buck. The cup clattered to the marble. Aerys's eyes bulged wetly. His body jerked once, twice. A strangled rasp cut the hush. A screech trying to escape a throat gone stone-stiff. Foam flecked his lips. Jamie stepped forward, alarm flashing gold in his gaze. "Your Grace?" The king's hands clawed the arms of his iron seat. A sound like tearing parchment threaded the air as muscles spasmed. The spider felt sweat bead beneath his wig. Had the dosage been wrong? Aerys struggled, wheezing, bones creaking under unseen pressure. Varys counted heartbeats. Now, any moment now. Aerys convulsed, and stilled. His head lolled sideways. A final breath rattled free, short and ugly. Silence reclaimed the hall. Jamie stared, face washed bone white. What have you?" "Save the city," Varys whispered. His legs threatened to buckle, but he held firm. "No bells will ring for this death, sir. Yet if songs are sung 100 years hence, they will be song enough." Outside the windows, dawn at last broke over Blackwater Bay, the sky bleeding pink and gold. Light speared the Iron Throne, casting jagged shadows across the corpse of the last Dragon King. The edges gleamed like fresh-forged blades. Jamie's mouth worked voicelessly. "Tywin, my father waits beyond the gate of the gods. He demanded entry yesterday. He will take the city anyway. He must not." A single shake of Jamie's head might have broken Varys' resolve, but the boy looked lost, unsteady. The spider seized the moment. "Ride for the walls. Tell Lord Tywin the king lives still, but has named a new hand. Him. Tell him the gates will open if he swears to keep order, to protect the small folk. With the mad king dead, there will be no fire, only peace." Jamie whispered, "You want me to lie to my own blood?" "A white cloak is not woven of lies, sir, but of duty. Choose which threads you value." Varys placed a hand on Jamie's mailed shoulder. "You wear a sword. Men believe swords. Tell your father the city welcomes him." Jamie looked to Aerys's husk, lips trembling. Perhaps he saw a flicker of mercy in the corpse's slack face, or perhaps he saw only what he needed to see. He spun on his heel and strode for the door. Varys sagged. The hall rang with the echo of Jamie's boots. He waited until the doors boomed shut, before he let his shoulders slump like emptied wineskins. "It is done," he thought, dazed. "It is done." Yet, in the throne's monstrous shadow, another thought coiled tight. Aerys's heir, Prince Rhaegar, lay dead upon the trident, his breastplate shattered by Robert Baratheon's hammer. The queen carried another child, yet unborn. Rhaegar's son and daughter clung to life in the nursery of Maegor's Holdfast, but only under the lion's paw of Sir Gregor Clegane, should Tywin wish it. And across the narrow sea, perhaps, young viseries and infant denaries still breathed, refugees in the womb of fate. A dragon's brood, scattered to the winds. The spider's work had never been blood alone. He must weave a web wider than the sky if the realm were to survive the storms to come. Even now ravens would wing from Mager's rookery with letters penned in invisible ink, promising pardons, offering coin, bending futures. Promises are seeds, he mused, and I have sown enough tonight to feed a kingdom. A tremor ran his length. He had not eaten since yesterday's dusk. The taste of mulled wine and venom clung to his tongue. He imagined rich Dornish olives, honeyed duck, pears soaked in red wine. Not yet, whispered sense. Not until the room is cleansed. He approached the dais. Eris slumped crookedly, crown fallen askew. A rivulet of spittle leaked from one corner of his mouth. Varys brushed a stray lock of silver-gold hair from the dead king's brow. You would have burned them all, he murmured, voice breaking on the emptiness. You would have drowned the city in green fire and called it justice. Forgive me if I chose another path. At his feet, the cup lay on its side, dark liquid spreading like a bruise across the marble. Varys knelt, lifted it, and turned it gently in his palms. The gilt rim glimmered. A spider's reflection stared back. A sudden clatter shattered the quiet. The drudge, girl, he reminded himself. She has a name, though I did not ask. Stumbled into view from the east door. Cheeks wet, breath hitching. My lord. Heh. Hush, Varys said, voice calm as cool milk. He set the cup upon the steps. Do any know you poured for him? She shook her head violently. No, no. Only us. Only you. Good. He opened a palm heavy with gold stags. Go to the docks. Find passage on the first ship, bound for Old Town or Bravos. I care not which. Do not return. Speak of this to no one and live. May. Her fingers closed on the coins as if on lifelines. She fled. Varys watched until she vanished into the maze of corridors. Whether fear or hope guided her, he could not say. But she will carry the tale in her eyes all her days. Trumpets blared suddenly, distant, uncertain, rippling through stone. Jaime reached the walls then, perhaps, spinning a story of living kings and open gates. Varys exhaled, a shuddering sigh. He wiped his palms upon his robe, though no blood stained them. Yet what is blood, after all? But the coin of realms. He had spent a king and purchased dawn. May it be enough? Footsteps scraped behind him. Varys spun, heart lurching, to find Grand Maester Pycelle, hobbling through the western arch. The old man's chain clanked like tethered iron wolves, link upon heavy link of gold and silver and bronze. His pale eyes widened at Arius' still form. "Seven, save us," he croaked. "What has?" "His grace took ill," Varys said smoothly. He coughed, gasped, and was gone. "A weakness of the heart, I fear." He gestured to the discarded chalice. He drank, complained of heat. Then Pycelle shuffled forward, beard trembling. His fingers probed the king's throat, found no pulse. "Dead," he whispered. "Truly dead. The realm mourns," Varys intoned. "But it must also act. We shall summon the lords within the city. The line of succession demands Princess Rhaenys and Prince Aegon be crowned jointly under a regency until Prince Viserys is located. That is, if the small folk are spared the horrors outside our walls." The maester's gaze sharpened through the haze of senility. "Lord Tywin will not abide children on the throne without his hand upon the reins. Then let us offer him that hand. He may serve as regent, so long as the babes live." Pycelle's lips twitched, almost a smile, though twisted. "You speak as though we wield the power to offer such gifts, my lord." Varys spread his plump hands. "What is power, Grand Maester, but the belief of other men? Convince Lord Tywin he rules, and he will not notice the strings guiding him." He laid gentle emphasis on the last words, and Pycelle's bushy brows knit, understanding, or at least suspicion, glittering behind cataract rims. "And who," the maester rasped, "guides the strings of the spider?" Varys inclined his head. "I serve the realm." "The realm," Pycelle echoed, as though tasting sour wine. He looked again at the corpse. "Will you summon Sir Barristan? He should stand vigil." "In due course." Truthfully, Varys feared Barristan Selmy's honor. The stalwart old knight might insist on proclaiming Aerys disfavored heir if rumor reached ears too quick. Time, the spider thought. Give me time to wrap silk around steel. He sent Pycelle shuffling away to rouse scribes and lords. Alone once more, Varys climbed the steps until he stood beside the jagged throne. He did not touch it. To sit would be brazen folly. Instead he traced with his gaze the ancient blades fused by dragonfire. Aerys had bled himself on those edges 100 times. Rhaegar had never sat the throne, nor Viserys. And the babes, little Aegon with downy silver hair, Rhaenys with her mother's dark eyes, what chance had they amidst lions? Not unless someone weaves them chances. From a hidden pocket in his sleeve, he drew several parchment slips, each bearing ciphered script. One to Stannis Baratheon on Dragonstone. Aerys is dead, Robert marches, bend to the true heirs. One to Eddard Stark with Hoster Tully's endorsement. The wolf may yet save the cubs. One to Oberyn Martell. Your niece and nephew live, protect them, and Dornish honor shall shine. And one, longer, darker, to Illyrio Mopatis in Pentos. Instructions for the road ahead, should the lions feast after all. He sealed each with a drop of green wax, the seal of the hand, not yet his. But soon, if whispers found purchase. Words are wind, the small folk said. But wind shook kingdoms. He tucked them away. A few quick ravens, and new futures would sprout like fresh grass through the soot of old fires. The trumpets rang again, nearer, brazen now. Boots thundered in corridors. The lion has entered, Varys thought. He allowed himself one last look at the dead king. Aerys seemed shrunken, almost pitiful, as though the poison had stripped him of all pretense of majesty. What is a crown truly, without the head to bear it? He touched 2 fingers to his brow in a gesture half prayer, half farewell. Then he slipped behind the arras into yet another secret stair, descending into echoing dark. Above, voices rose, confusion, alarm, demands for order. Let them wonder, he thought. The game had changed, but the board remained. He had plucked one piece away, others must now dance. In the gloom of the tunnel, he quickened his pace. There were babes to shelter, lions to tame, rebels to placate, maesters to deceive, and always, always, webs to spin. But for one heartbeat in the quiet he permitted himself a single indulgence. He imagined King's Landing 5 days hence, unburnt, its markets bustling, its bells ringing the sweet clamor of life. He tasted that imagined sound, savored it like Dornish wine on festival night. A soft smile curved his lips. Perhaps he dared to hope this one good deed might yet bloom into 1,000 more. And the spider scurried on. Oh, ah. Dawn spilled fully across King's Landing as Jaime Lannister cantered his white courser up the slope toward the Gate of the Gods, cloak snapping behind him like a sail caught in a fickle wind. The city walls loomed higher with each stride, crenellations bristling with archers who watched the gilded rider with narrowed eyes, but dared not loose. Smoke from the dawn cook-fires curled lazily into the warming air, and from the distant harbor the bray of gulls carried an almost carefree lilt, mockery perhaps of the moment's gravity. Jaime's heart hammered in his chest, each beat echoing the staccato churn of his horse's hooves on cobble. What lie would serve best? What face should a son wear before the most dangerous man alive, when that man was also his father? The gates yawned open at his shout, and the sight beyond made his breath catch. Lord Tywin Lannister stood in the saddle of his charger, burnished plate gleaming like the sunrise itself, crimson cloak draped with casual magnificence across one massive pauldron. Around him a forest of red and gold standards swayed above 8,000 spears that glinted wickedly beneath polished tips. The golden lion prowled every banner, jaws parted in eternal snarl. Tywin's cold green eyes fixed on his heir with an intensity bordering on physical force. Jaime slid from his saddle at once, boots crunching gravel, and knelt. "Father." Tywin's voice came low, each syllable sheathed in iron. "You were to guard the king." "I do," Jaime replied and forced his gaze upward. "His grace lives but is unwell." The city fears him, yet he names you hand in gratitude for past loyalty. He bids you enter, restore order, and safeguard his grandchildren. Doubtin? A hush swept the Lannister ranks. The spears wavered not, yet men's grips tightened. Tywin's gaze searched Jaime's face, as though hunting for the hairline crack in a lie. His first order is to open the gates. Yes, my lord. With Robert Baratheon's host mere days away, peace within these walls is all he desires. Tywin's jaw worked a silent moment. Only those who knew him well could detect the flicker of calculation behind the impassive mask. We enter, he said at last, and spurred forward. The lion banners rolled in like a tide of molten gold, and the small folk atop the battlements held their breath at the passing of doom or deliverance. Time alone would judge which. Jaime let the column swallow him, wove his mare in alongside the gilded lions of Casterly Rock, and prayed Varys' web was strong enough to steady the weight he had just placed upon it. Within the Red Keep, Varys heard the first thunder of Lannister boots upon the cobbles of Aegon's high hill. He had traded silk slippers for soft leather shoes that gripped the flagstones well. Haste called for pragmatism. Near Maegor's holdfast, a cadre of gold cloaks watched him approach, uncertain whether to bow or bar the way. Their captain stood stiff as an unstrung bow, hand resting on the pommel of a short sword too fine for a city guardsman. Varys recognized him. Harwin Stocks, a butcher's son raised to quick station by timely bribes and faster flattery. My lord, Harwin ventured, eyes darting through the arched entryway toward the holdfast inner court. Is it true? I heard horns at the gate. Lord Tywin enters in peace, bearing the king's blessing, Varys answered, letting his voice spread calm like salve on raw flesh. But peace must be prepared for. Open these doors. I require an escort to Queen Elia and the royal children at once. The captain hesitated. Word traveled like wildfire within castle walls. Some already suspected the unthinkable. But Varys' gaze never wavered, and after a heartbeat, Harwin gestured two men forward. Helms clanked. Spears rattled. The spider swept past them, heartbeat steady, each breath a measured beat in a song he had composed long ago. Inside the holdfast nursery, Elia Martell sat upon a cushioned chair of carved weirwood, rocking little Aegon in her arms, while Rhaenys played upon a quilt at her feet. Sunlight streamed through a tall lancet window, painting Elia's dusky cheeks in hues of rose and gold. She looked up as Varys entered, and worry hardened the delicate angles of her face. My lady, Varys murmured, bowing. Many things are afoot. The city will soon throng with Lannister spears. For your children's safety, we must act swiftly. Let him so. Elia's fingers stilled upon Aegon's tiny back. Do not cloak me in riddles, eunuch, she said, voice soft yet edged with Dornish steel. Tell me plainly. Is Aerys dead? Varys felt a chill even in the warm room. His grace succumbed to a sudden seizure before dawn. I saw it with my own eyes. He spoke your names with his final breath. Elia closed her eyes, and grief flickered in the tight line of her mouth. Grief, or perhaps relief. Rhaegar is gone. Now, Aerys. What remains? Hope, Varys replied. A fragile thing, yet precious. Lord Tywin rides in as regent. For now he has accepted the heir's legitimacy, but politics shifts like desert sand. We must ensure your children cannot be used as pawns. Nanandaristani. Rhaenys toddled to cling at her mother's knee, huge brown eyes studying the bald lord with solemn curiosity. Tell a story, she lisped, and held up a carved wooden lion so battered its tail was long gone. Soon, sweet princess, Varys said, kneeling to her height. But first we must play a game. Have you heard of hide and seek? Rhaenys nodded vigorously, black curls bouncing. Today we play the greatest round ever devised. You will hide so well that even the mightiest knights cannot find you. Elias' gaze sharpened. You mean to spirit us away? For a short while, Varys assured her. A Lyseni cog waits in the river. It will slip you south to Sunspear before Lord Tywin decides what price your lives might fetch. From there, your brother Oberyn can shield you. Dorne is fierce in defense of its own. Elia rose, still cradling the infant. She looked down on Varys, shoulders squared despite the frailty that illness had sown into her flesh since childbirth. "And what do you gain, Spider?" Varys met her eyes without flinching. "A realm not drowned in needless blood." Children laugh louder than soldiers shout. I much prefer laughter. She studied him a moment longer, then offered a shallow nod. "Very well, we shall hide." Her lips brushed Aegon's silky hair. "Gather what we need," she told a nursemaid, quickly and quietly. The woman curtsied and scampered. Varys rose, setting plans in motion. A secret stair spiraled from the nursery to a forgotten sally port above the river. Smugglers once plied it, and Varys had paid a mason to keep it usable. 2 gold cloaks waited, trusted men whose purse strings he had knotted with promises of rank. He instructed them to shed their tubards and don plain cloaks of gray, then to escort the princess and prince as common children of a merchant family bound for lice. "If anyone asks," he whispered, "their father died in the riot at Cobbler's Square last moon. Their mother seeks passage home." They saluted, eyes gleaming with the thrill of conspiracy. Elia prepared, folding tiny garments into a satchel, while Rhaenys chattered about the exciting game. At last the nurse returned with a small pot of honey cakes. Elia insisted the children would not travel hungry. Varys could spare a smile at that. Compassion in a queen might yet seed compassion in a realm. Candle marks later, when the first roar of Lannister trumpets echoed across the lower bailey, Varys slipped back into the maze of passages. He left the royals descending the dark tunnel, nursemaids clutching the precious babes, gold cloaks guiding lanterns, whose light he could no longer see once he turned the corner. The soft hush of their retreat mingled with the thudding of his own heart. "Silk threads must hold," he prayed. "Let the web bear their weight." The throne room awaited. Already Tywin strode its length, boots ringing on marble, 7 Kingsguard at his back, Jaime among them, and a score of bannermen fanning wide, searching every arch and alcove for threat. Barristan Selmy knelt before the Iron Throne. White cloak pooled around him, sword planted tip first against the floor. 2 gauntleted hands folded over its grip. Like a statue of some forgotten god, he held vigil beside Aerys's corpse. Tywin paused at the first step. Sunlight knifed through the high windows, setting his armor ablaze in motes of gold. He frowned down at the body, appraising, detached. "Who found him?" "I," Barristan answered, voice low but steady. "He was beyond help. The Grand Maester named it a sudden failure of the heart." "Convenient," Tywin murmured, and flicked his gaze toward Varys as the eunuch approached. "Is that your assessment, Lord Varys?" "I have no cause to doubt our Grand Maester," Varys replied, giving exactly the faintest hint of a bow. His Grace's health had waned for moons. Tywin's eyes narrowed, reading books in the quiet between words. Yet he said nothing further of it. Instead he turned to Pycelle, who hovered like a vulture near the eastern colonnade. "The small council shall convene at once. Summon what members remain. This city needs a lord, this day, not tomorrow." "Eight once, my lord," the maester wheezed and shuffled off with chains clanking. Tywin gave a curt nod to Barristan. "Sir, your vigil honors the king, but the realm requires your sword more than your tears. Remain near, ready to act should disorder stir." Barristan rose, slow, joints creaking, honor towing him along whether he willed or no. Jaime offered a silent incline of head as their gazes met. Varys sensed tension writ like runes across the space between father and son. Jaime's jaw stood rigid, as though clamped by an invisible maester. Cersei's absence hovered too. She would have raced to see her father's triumph. Yet perhaps Tywin thought it wiser to hold her in the manse beside the Lion Gate, safe until the city proved toothless. If only, Varys mused, the father feared the daughter as he ought. As the throne room emptied save for a handful of guards, Tywin faced Varys squarely. The air between them seemed to still. "Tell me," the Lion of Casterly Rock said, "what game you play?" Varys bent his head, wrists folding over his ample stomach. "A humble one. The realm suffers. You are hand. I serve the hand." "Words." Tywin's voice cooled. "My scouts tell me Rhaegar's brat's live, nestled in Maegor's holdfast. Yet when my men searched, they found only frightened servants. Then? Children flee loud boots. Varys offered smoothly. I dispatched trusted cloaks to convey them to safety until tempers ease. Your trusted cloaks. A long pause. Whether those babes live or die shapes how we greet Robert Baratheon at the city gate. Varys met the Lord's steely stare. They live. And if King Robert wishes to plant a dynasty rather than merely claim a crown, he will need heirs of his body, not corpses of Targaryen babes. The small folk love a wedding feast better than a slaughter. Dynastia. Tywin's mouth curved, almost smile, almost snarl. You counsel leniency. Unusual for you. I counsel profit. Slaughter sows resentment, spawns rebellion that bleeds coffers dry. But mercy, judiciously offered, buys gratitude, and gratitude may be taxed. He let the word hang. Tywin seemed to consider. You will produce the children when I ask. When it serves the realm. Varys bowed again, shallow. I trust Lord Tywin will know the moment. I usually do, the lion said, and the matter rested, for now. News of the king's death poured through the city like a released river, soaking every alley and wine sink. Some small folk wept. Memories of the young King Aerys, bright and gallant before madness corroded him, lingered in older hearts. Others cheered, relieved the dragon would never roar again. Most simply went on with grinding life, for small folks' bellies did not fill with royal grief. By mid-afternoon, a proclamation of regency, penned by Pycelle and signed by a trembling council, unfurled from the ramparts. Lord Tywin Lannister, Hand of the King, would govern until Prince Aegon's majority. Cheers greeted it from Lannister men. Mutters stirred among Stormlanders and Reachmen yet milling in camps outside the walls. They feared Baratheon vengeance, and the wind smelled of war. That dusk Varys sought Barristan Selmy atop the highest rampart of the Tower of the Hand. The White Knight leaned his elbows on warm stone, gazing west where clouds burned orange. Below, the bustling yard swarmed with wagons bearing Lannister banners, armorers singing their hammers against anvils, cooks shouting for hares and onions. Barristan looked old in that glow, silver hair catching fire as sunlight died on it. Sir, Varys greeted softly. Barristan did not turn. I would have drawn against Tywin if he'd laid rough hands on the babes. So would I, Varys said, truth edging through. But steel is not always the sharpest blade. Barristan's shoulders tightened. You speak of missing children. The guard tell tales of a hidden passage. Yours, perhaps. Passages belong to the castle, Varys replied. I only borrow them. The children breathe, I swear it. Barristan finally faced him, eyes bleak and firelit. Do you swear by honor, Spider? By the gods? Varys set a palm to his chest. I swear by the realm, and by the memory of good men whose lives ended because a king lost his wits. He saw the knight flinch. Would you have had the little ones remain? Lord Tywin's mercy is not off-sung? Barristan opened his mouth, closed it. At last, if they live, if you mean to preserve them, then make me guardian. My blade is clean of plots. Varys inclined his head. When the time is ripe, I shall lead you to them. Until then, guard the throne from those who would shatter it for personal gain. Nan. And who guards it from you? Varys smiled, thin as thread. I have no wish to sit it, sir. My flesh is softer than most. Its edges would cut me too quickly. They parted, twilight-wrapping walls, in purple hush. Beyond the city, Robert Baratheon's host rolled south in a rumbling serpent of men and banners. Scouts reported the fall of King's Landing to Lannister arms, and Robert's laughter shook the oaks of Sea Road as he imagined Tywin's golden head bowed to a Baratheon crown. Yet Ned Stark urged caution. An open gate may hide snares, he warned as they broke camp beneath moonlight. Let Tywin name his price before we sheathe our swords. Robert promised to name a price of his own, wine, women, and Tywin's troops kneeling beneath the stag. Still, he heeded his friend, dispatching riders under truce to treat with the new regent. So came 60 horse beneath banners half stag half trout. Lord Eddard Stark, Lord Hoster Tully weakened yet unbroken, and John Arryn wise as the Val's high peaks. They rode unarmed save for honor, bearing a parchment sealed with wax shaped like a crowned antler. Varys watched them enter at sunset of the second day, curiosity gnawing. Wheels within wheels. If Robert wore the crown, would Tywin bow to babes? Or would the Golden Lion choose a different game? He could not linger in speculation. Night had fallen when a shadow slipped into his solar, moving with the silence of a phantom. Instinct had Varys spin, dagger hidden in sleeve half drawn. Yet the figure lowered a hood to reveal Cersei Lannister's river of golden hair, and the hungry light that always burned cool behind her green eyes. "Spider," she purred. "Do you tremble at your own web?" Varys bowed, knife vanishing. "Your Grace, beg pardon, my lady, for the realm may yet shift names. How may I serve?" She crossed the carpet with predatory grace, cat-green gown rustling faintly. "I would taste truth. Did your soft hand guide the poison into Eris?" He answered with practiced indirection. The king's heart guided its own end. Her lips curled. "You dance words. Father believes you a necessary nuisance, but I see a spider fat on royal blood. Tell me, what role have you spun for me in your little tapestry?" "Nurse." Varys met her gaze. "The realm weaves roles itself. A daughter may become queen. A queen may become dowager. A dowager may become regent. Threads twist. None know the final pattern." Cersei leaned close enough that her perfume, lilac and cedar, filled his senses. "Here's my pattern. Robert Baratheon mounts the throne, weds me, and I birth princes. Father gains the staggered wolf and the reborn dragon in chains. Yet Robert must believe I am his prize, not a concession. You will whisper this truth in his ear." "Then," Varys arched a brow, "I serve the realm. If the realm demands peace through marriage, I shall whisper." "Good." Her hand, gloved in soft kid skin, brushed his cheek. Mock caress, hidden menace. "Whisper well, or my next visit will not find you so sprightly." Then she departed as silently as she came, leaving the perfume of ambition thick in the air. Varys allowed himself a slow exhale. His heart beat not from fear but from the thrill of new variables. He noted them as a scribe might tally sums. Cersei harbors intent to wed Robert. Tywin desires regency. Robert lusts for crown and conquest. Stark champions children's lives. Piece by piece, the mosaic sharpened. The small council met at dawn. Torches guttered in iron sconces, casting feverish light over Tywin's stern profile, Pycelle's sagging jowls, Renly Baratheon's boyish curiosity, brought to watch on his brother's behest, and Varys' own serene mask. Jon Arryn sat too as envoy, face calm yet eyes watchful. "Robert will brook no compromise," Jon said after the formal courtesies ended. "He names himself king by right of arms and conquest. He demands surrender, recognition, and the bodies of Rhaegar's children to secure his throne." A hush met that last demand. Varys felt each heartbeat like a drum. Tywin's fingers drummed as well. Slower, heavier. The babes are but babes. Slaying them plants seeds of future treason. Jon Arryn inclined his head. "I have spoken similarly, yet Robert's rage still blazes hot for Rhaegar's crime." He glanced to Varys. "I sense alternatives." All eyes turned upon the master of whisperers. He spread his hands. A compromise might see the children exiled, their claim renounced in exchange for lives spared. To Bravos, perhaps, where no Iron Throne reaches. "And their mother?" Tywin asked. Varys answered before thought. "She joins them." Pycelle harumphed. "And what of Viserys and the babe his dragon-sired mother carries on Dragonstone? Exile them too. A scattering of Targaryens across the narrow sea will draw malcontents like flies." "Flies lack ships," Varys said. "Few lords dare fund a lost cause. Better flies than martyrs." Renly's young voice pierced the debate. "Better yet, a marriage." Rhaenys to some lord loyal to Robert perhaps. That ends the line clean without a sword. Now I see. Tywin's head tilted. And who would wed a girl whose birth's future claim invites rebellion? Mace Tyrell, Renly said with mischievous brightness. He'll wed anyone if it gets him closer to a throne. Betroth Rhaenys to his son. Highgarden's wealth pads the crown's coffers, and Tyrell loyalty cages the dragon. And Aeron considered. A bold notion. Yet first Robert must relent on blood. Tywin rose, cloak flowing. I will speak to him. Stark and Aeron may plead mercy. Lannister will offer utility. With mercy and gold together, even Robert's fury may cool. His gaze snagged Varys's for a heartbeat. Produce the children when summoned. Should they vanish, I will flay the truth from every rat in these walls. Varys bowed deeply. They will be at hand. After the council dispersed, Jaime found his father beside the window of the Hand Solar, sunlight hallowing the broad ridge of his shoulders. The city sprawled below, rooftops glowing like embers on cooling hearthstones. Jaime stood silent until Tywin spoke. You guard secrets poorly. Jaime stiffened. I keep my vows. Aerys is dead. The words fell like coins on a tomb slab. If you wielded the blade. I did not, Jaime said, voice hushed and firm. Tywin half turned, sharp gaze measuring. Then you stood aside while others did. You are 20 summers, yet naivety clings. Learn this, mercy given your enemy often returns as fangs. Was it mercy, Jaime asked, or madness that bade you sack a city ready to open gates? Tywin's eyes cooled. I offered peace on my terms. The past matters less than the day ahead. Serve as you should, obey, observe, and speak little. And you will keep your cloak. Then see. Jaime held his father's stare until pride threatened fracture, then inclined his head. As you say, my lord. That night, as thunder rolled from a distant summer storm, Varys moved again through hidden bones of the castle. His thoughts coiled around contingency. If Tywin failed to sway Robert, slaughter might follow. The children must be beyond reach. He met his courier beneath the ruins of an old granary, where no guards prowled after sunset. The man knelt, presenting a sealed raven tube. Inside, "My princess sails," wrote Lord Stark in cipher, the words small as ant tracks. The dawn tide took Elias Cog downriver toward Crackclaw Point, and Barristan, true to oath, rode 3 leagues behind along the King's Road. Unseen escort draped in plain gray cloak. Relief flooded Varys's limbs. He had wagered trust on the old knight's conscience. Now the board shifted in his favor. If worst came, only Viserys and the unborn babe on Dragonstone remained to guard. The storm finally broke, just past the midnight bell, hurling rain in sheets that hammered the castle roofs. Lightning forked sky, white hot, veining the clouds. In the yard below Varys' turret, Lannister men scuttled to batten tents and stack shields. Far beyond the breakers of Blackwater Bay, fires glimmered where Robert's camp shivered beneath wet pavilions. Rain equalized lords and peasants alike, Varys mused, washing all banners to the same dripping cloth. Inside the Tower of the Hand, Tywin and Robert faced each other across a long oaken table at sunrise, steam spiraling from pewter cups of mulled wine. Ned Stark, Aeron, and Jaime stood behind the stag. Pycelle and Kevan Lannister behind the lion. Varys watched from near a tapestry depicting Aegon's first conquest, dragons coiling over kings in surrender. The symbolism was not lost. Robert slammed a fist on the wood. The children, he snarled, are dragons unborn. Rhaegar raped Lyanna and their line must end. Rhaegar wronged you, Tywin agreed, voice calm as winter's first frost. But his babes wronged no one. Spare them, and you prove a just king, not a butcher. Ned added. Lyanna would ask it, Robert. The name of his dead love carved pain across Robert's broad face. He paced, great strides eating the sunlight. His fists opened, closed. At last he spun on Varys. You, where are they? Varys stepped forward, bowing. A voyage away from knives, noble or otherwise, your grace. Return them, Robert barked. To the crown, yes, Varys said smoothly, but not to the sword. Wed the girl to Highgarden. Send the boy to fosterage in the Vale under Lord Arryn's watchful eye. 2 great houses bound to your reign by loyalty and gratitude. Nan? Tywin spoke before Robert could retort. The Iron Throne profits more from living hostages than dead heirs. Dorne will rage if Elias' blood is spilled. Let their fury remain sand-bound. Robert turned to Jon Arryn, his surrogate father. Tell me, is this wisdom or surrender? Jon met his gaze. Wisdom, my king. Slay them, and you spawn a war of vengeance in 20 years. Spare them, and you break the cycle. Lightning flickered through Robert's eyes. Slowly he exhaled. Very well. They live. But Viserys and the Queen's babe remain beyond our reach. If one dragon must survive, so be it, but no more. Then? Varys bowed deeper. Your justice rivals your valor, your grace. Robert grunted, not fooled. Do not test its limits, eunuch. He turned back to Tywin. I claim Cersei for my queen. Your daughter will wed me before the moon turns. Tywin dipped his head. Victory masked behind ice. The House of Lannister is honored. Thus the game pivoted again. Ravens soared across sky still streaked with storm cloud, carrying news of the Baratheon-Lannister alliance. Of Targaryen heirs spared yet safely out of sight. Of new lords named to new offices. The small folk shrugged. Kings came and went. Highborn married and murdered. But bread remained dear and rents relentless. In a quiet chamber above the Godswood, Varys dipped quill in ink, penning final instructions to the Lysini captain guiding Elias' ship. Change course for Bravos, he wrote. Names altered. The seal of the spider will cover fees. He paused, considered a flourish, and added, Teach the children the songs of many tongues. In song there is safety beyond daggers. As he sealed the parchment, he sensed movement at his back. Jaime again. Cloak damp, yet gleaming. You spin tirelessly, the young knight said. Spiders grow hungry, Varys replied. And winter nights are long. Jaime leaned against the jamb, handsome face a mask of wry resignation. Does any final truth touch your heart, or are all truth's pieces on your board? Varys laid the letter aside. There is one. Children should not pay for father's sins. My father would not agree. I would not expect him to. Varys crossed to the arrow slit, rain misting in. But one day his lion's roar will fade, and other eyes will watch these walls. When that day comes, those children may remember mercy. Jaime absorbed that. And remember you. If I am blessed, yes. Varys' smile was soft, melancholy. Though spiders seldom live to see their webs outlast the storms. Jaime straightened. Robert rides for the Septive Baelor to pray for Lyanna. Tywin rides beside him to show piety. I ride with the King's Guard. You will counsel them? One. Whispers travel best on pilgrim roads, Varys said. I shall be near. He offered a nod of respect. Jaime returned it, then vanished, steel boots fading into the noise of a kingdom reawakening under new banners. Weeks slipped by. King Robert's coronation bloomed into festival. Mead, roasted boar, jugglers on silk ropes spanning the square before the sept. Cersei sparkled at his side, a vision in green silk sewn with seed pearls. Her smile promised kingdoms. Tywin watched, unreadable. Ned Stark bent stiffly under foreign finery, haunted by memory of blood-soaked snow. Varys drifted among revelers, gathering schedules and secrets. Which sellswords Tywin quietly retained, which reach lords bristled at marriage pacts, which smiths forged chain collars for river barges destined for the stepstones, supplies for covert colonies perhaps. He noted how Robert laughed louder when cups outnumbered ours. How Cersei's gaze lingered on Jaime across the hall, a breath too long, how Jon Arryn's cough gnawed deeper each morning. And still the letters flew east. Across the narrow sea, a pale boy with violet eyes learned its sums from a Bravosi Bravo under a false name. His sister chased gulls along fog-slick quays. Elia, frail but fierce. taught them the words justice and mercy with equal weight. Oberyn Martell's reply arrived on wings of vengeance withheld. We remember. We will bide. Sunspear's silence burned hotter than open threat. In the hush that settles after triumph, some hearts seek absolution. Jaime Lannister sought it one night, atop the battlements where once he spoke with Varys. The spider joined him, breeze tousling his wig's curls. Moonlight silvered the city, cloaking ugliness in beauty. I watched Robert crowned, Jaime said, voice low. The realm cheered. They forgot the Mad King in a heartbeat. Some memories weigh too heavy, Varys said. Do you forget? Jaime asked. Varys' lips parted in a sigh. Never. I keep each name, each face. Jaime turned, expression carved by moonlight, into something strangely soft. Tell me, was it worth it? Poisoning a king, hiding his heirs, seating Robert. Will the realm you save thank you? Varys met the knight's searching gaze. That is not why I did it. Then why? Varys looked out over King's Landing, rooftops glowing soft as embers, the mother river black satin beneath starlight, bells tolling the hour like distant laughter. Because someone had to. Jaime absorbed the words, nodded once, and the curtain of silence closed between them. Seasons would turn. Storms would come. Wolves would stir in distant snows. Dragons might yet hatch in forgotten shadow. But for this night, the capital slept tranquil beneath new crowns, unaware that a bald gelding stood guard over dreams fragile as spun sugar. Varys lingered until the last torch guttered in the yard, then slipped away to his chambers to pen yet more letters, spin yet finer strands. In the quiet he allowed himself a final thought of the two children. Safe beyond reach of iron thrones and golden lions, their dreams still unscarred. He imagined Rhaenys' laugh when she bested her hiding escorts, the delighted squeal of Aegon discovering tide pools along the Braavosi docks. He stored these images like gems in a secret heart box and locked it tight. Spider, they would call him. Schemer, whisperer, liar. Perhaps. But not, he prayed, monster. Far below, in alleys slick from earlier rain, a beggar curled around herself for warmth, murmured a half-remembered lullaby. Its melody wove through the night, thread seeking thread, binding the great city in a gentle hush. And somewhere beyond the waves, a little girl with black curls hummed the same tune as her mother stroked her hair, echo rippling across leagues of black water, promising dawn beyond every storm. Varys slept then, briefly, and in dreams he walked a quiet shore where no banners flew and children built castles of sand that no tide could claim. Hell. The summer that settled over King's Landing after Robert's coronation came thick and honey-slow. The kind of southern heat that draped its weight on stone and skin and conscience alike. Clouds of gnats hovered in amber shafts of afternoon light, hovering between soaring columns in the Red Keep's open walkways, and across Flea Bottom the gutters clogged with spoiled rind and fish bones, fermented in the sun. War, fire, and sudden deaths should have left scars. Yet the city behaved as though it had woken from fever into lazy dream. Gold cloaks dozed beside doorways, their halberd points sunk in cracked flagstones. Dock laborers laughed too loudly at jests lubricated by newly cheap wine. Lord Tywin's peace offering to the small folk, and from the high windows of the maiden vault white curtains billowed like languid sails, hinting at Cersei's silhouette pacing within, restless as any caged cat. Varys drifted through those days as quietly as the heat shimmer, slippered feet whispering along corridors that smelled of sun-warmed dust and polished lemon oil. He had learned long ago the art of stillness after upheaval. Men expected storms immediately after storms, not the subtle hush that followed. Secrets ripened easiest in quiet orchards, and already his nets sagged with heavy fruit. One rumor claimed the Tyrells prepared a fleet to fetch Rhaenys at sea and wed her to some distant cousin. Another insisted Stannis Baratheon scoured every pebble of Dragonstone, suspecting Viserys had slipped free disguised as a deck squire. A third whispered that Oberyn Martell practiced daily with daggers coated in rare poisons while he smiled at Dornish fruit markets, waiting for vengeance to sail south on black sails. Varys tended each rumor like a gardener, watering some, pruning others, planting new seeds in fallow minds. The small council, swollen now with Robert's drinking companions and Tywin's gray-haired cousins, met seldom during high summer. The king preferred the tilt yard, or the hunting groves beyond Rosby, or the deep, echoing cellars where his laugh cracked like thunder amid barrels, sweating cold beads in candlelight. He still brooded over the lost Lyanna, and he still grumbled when reminded the spared Targaryen babes might complicate his reign. But each day Cersei's green eyes distracted him anew, and each night the queen's whispered promises of sons quieted his old grievance by a sliver more. Varys attended those half-hearted councils with serene diligence, marking every slight roll of Lord Renly's shoulders when Maester Pycelle rambled, noting the subtle way Kevan Lannister laid a calming palm on Tywin's wrist whenever the hand's impatience sparked. He watched Jon Arryn age a fortnight with each session, the faintest tremor touching the Arryn seal ring whenever the Lord of the Eyrie sipped watered wine. Measures of time are most visible in the hands, Varys mused. New freckles, fresh tremors, bruises that linger half a breath too long. The realm's pulse surfaced in such details. Outside the palace, the pulse fluttered differently. A guild of candlemakers petitioned the Master of Coin for compensation. Lord Baelish, recently elevated, quick of wit and lazy of morals, claiming Cersei's lavish coronation torches had devoured half their winter stock. Baelish laughed and offered them a crown stipend deducted from the next levy on Dornish wine. The candlemakers left confused but grateful, while the Dornish merchants cursed a scarcity of barrels before their ships even reached the harbor. Varys watched that small circle grow, one man's minor gain, another's resentful loss, and foresaw an autumn where prices pricked tempers sharper than spears. He filed the knowledge beside other simmering discontents. Stormlanders grousing that the Reach dominate grain trade, riverlords muttering at Lannister garrisons stationed for peace, distant whispers from Skagos that the North's new taxes bred quiet fury in stout hearts. Peace was never truly still. It merely rearranged its dragons upon the board. High above those petty quarrels, Cersei Lannister carried swelling secrets beneath embroidered gowns. By mid-harvest, the city gossiped about nothing else. The queen's glow, the hand's satisfied silence, the king's deeper cups of strong wine to toast the son he foresaw. Septon's blessed mother and bathed thrice weekly, each ceremony showering the queen's corridor in rose petals that wilted before sunrise in the lingering heat. In council, Tywin allowed himself the faintest softening around the eyes whenever the topic turned to heirs, but Jaime wore unease like an ill-fitted tunic. Varys felt it in the Kingslayer's bouts of midnight practice in the outer yard, where the clang of golden steel rang through the small hours until squires begged respite. Some nights the eunuch watched from lofted windows, seeing sweat run bright paths over Jaime's bare arms as he hammered at straw men until dawn chalked blue along ramparts. Guilt? Fear? Varys could not be sure, but he suspected secrets twisted too tightly would one day snap with sound enough to topple kingdoms. On the far side of the narrow sea, the two youngest Targaryens learned to breathe without titles. In Braavos, the great canal steamed under summer sun, and Rhaenys chased black-winged gulls across plank bridges while her nursemaid, Nyssa, scolded in three tongues. Aegon, now answering to Egon Waters, the orphan of a Lyseni spice trader, spoke his first word at the chimes of the Moonsinger Temple. Not mother, not milk, but a garbled version of Dracarys, a Drogkeeper's command Elia had once whispered to amuse him. Barristan Selmy, never far, heard the syllables and felt ice settle inside the armor of his aging ribs. Each night in their hidden villa beyond the purple harbor he knelt before the babe's mahogany crib and prayed in hushed desperation that no Braavosi street urchin would see flecks of royal purple in those eyes, that no braggart sing-song would carry the name of Targaryen across the sea winds. Yet rumors rustled regardless, and Braavosa's famed courtesan of the counting house began to ask curious questions about the silver-haired boy who speaks Valyrian like a gull caws. Barristan wrote long letters to Varys describing his fears, Though he doubted any raven could cross the sea swift or safe enough, he carried the letters anyway, bound in plain calfskin, as though their weight could anchor him to duty. Nearer home, Dragonstone brooded. The volcanic isle's black cliffs slit the sky like jagged knives, and storm swells battered its basalt feet day and night. Viserys, almost 8, roamed the echoing Dragonmont passages with candles stubbed to waxy nubs, chasing shadows he named enemies. His company consisted of ancient maids who spoke harsh Lyseni dialects, and the silent, stern Stannis Baratheon, who commanded the garrison. Stannis disliked children, especially those carrying dragon blood. But Robert had not yet chosen final judgment for the exiled line, so Stannis, bound fast by duty, fed and sheltered the boy. Each sunrise, he summoned Viserys to lessons in the great map room, where ridges of old Aegon's painted table reared like frozen waves. There, amid the towering relief of Westeros in pine and pitch, Viserys learned geography at the sharp end of Stannis' disapproval. He named rivers and keeps with fragile pride, even as spite thickened his thin voice when he lingered on the Westerlands or Storm's End. At night, the boy sat atop the fortress battlements and gazed east, convinced his mother's unborn babe would be a brother fierce enough to win back the crown. Clouds of gulls circled above the sea, screaming like the ghosts of dragons gone. Winter ravens from the citadel announced that the long summer might finally be easing. A faint chill seeped into King's Landing by second moon of autumn, turning the air brittle inside stone halls. Robert staged a final tourney before cold truly arrived, inviting free lances and hedge knights to break their lances for the glory of the new reign. Fields beneath the city walls erupted in gaudy tents of striped silk and painted shields. Vendors sold roasted apples, dripping with honey. Minstrels sang of lions wedding stags and wolves howling north. Yet, even amid the revelry, half the whispers spoke of the queen's child due in spring, half of the Targaryen babes, vanished by sorcery, and a dangerous few of the small folks' quiet wonder whether dragons were truly gone. Varys heard them all. Markets in full throng made fine listening chambers. While jugglers tossed knives and coins, the spider gathered sentences and shaped them into subtle warnings delivered by courier to Tywin's wary ear. "Your grace, discontent stirs in the cracks." Tywin rewarded such vigilance with curt nods. But the eunuch saw fatigue pooling behind the hand's proud gaze. Fatigue and something harder, as though every whisper of unrest hammered one more rivet into a grim resolve. During the tourney's grand melee, Jaime Lannister waded among armored brutes like a dancer through drunkards, soared a flash of bright arrogance. He felled 2 Mormonts, a Selmy squire, and a sellsword knight in rapid flourishes, then met Eddard Stark amid dust and clangor. Squires gasped to see lion and direwolf trade strokes beneath banners of crimson and smoke gray, sunlight flicking off handsome gold and brooding iron. But their duel lasted only heartbeats. Jaime slipped on churned earth. Stark's blade kissed his hauberk with restraint, and honor forced concession. They parted nodding, but Varys caught the flicker of grudging respect in the Kingslayer's eyes, and the frustration in Ned's frown. Different men, the spider mused, yet both slaves to codes that bend before crowns. One day, those codes might clash. That night, feasts blazed in every hall. Robert, sweat sheened from laughing contests and ale, summoned Varys closer than usual, flinging an arm, heavy with wine scent, across the eunuch's shoulders. "They say you're the cleverest spider in my web," he slurred. "Tell me, what would you spin for a king too fat to chase his own thoughts?" Varys smiled mildly. "A net strong enough to catch traitors yet soft enough not to bruise the crown." Robert guffawed, slopping wine down his beard. "Aye. And which's more plentiful, traitors or nets?" "More nets may be woven," Varys answered. "But traitors sprout whenever the realm's soil lies neglected." The king's laughter faded. For a moment his eyes focused sharp as spear points. "So teach me to weed, spider, or I'll forge plowshares out of all your silk." He pushed away, leaving Varys smelling grapes and regret. After the feast, as torches guttered low, the spider found himself summoned, not by king or hand, but by Cersei herself. She awaited in the queen's ballroom, a vaulted gallery hung with tapestries of long-ago harvests, where she reclined upon a cushioned window seat draped in moonlight, one hand resting protectively on her swelling belly. Her voice carried a crisp edge. "Your little birds sing I lie with my brother," she said without preamble. "Yet you remain silent in council. Why?" Varys inclined his head. "I keep songbirds free from cages. Their notes are meant for the realm's harmony, not its discord." "Nan." She narrowed eyes. "Spare me riddles. You know truth or fragments. You could unmake my world with a whisper." "Truth," Varys murmured, fingers steepling, "is malleable. Even if your brother fathered your child, what realm would dare confess to hearing it? Robert would break before believing he shares his bed with betrayal so profound. And Tywin? He let possibility hang." Cersei's tone chilled further. "So we are partners." "We are," Varys said, "prisoners of the same tapestry. Tear one thread wrongly, and the entire image unravels." "Benny." She rose slowly, moonlight tracing her silhouette. "Keep your birds singing sweet, Eunuch, and you shall keep your tongue." She left him amid shadow, and the ghost smell of roses wilted in a forgotten vase. The hush heavy with unspoken threats. Varys exhaled long, feeling his pulse in fingertips. That conversation would echo in corners for years, he suspected. Jon Arryn's decline quickened through frostfall. By the time the last leaves blew brittle along the Street of Sisters, he coughed blood into embroidered kerchiefs and slept with a brazier at bedside, despite Casterly rock coal, costing a stag a pound. Maester Pycelle blamed chill damp, though winter had barely nipped. Varys, visiting in the hush of pre-dawn under guise of council duty, found the old falcon lord lucid beneath the pallor. "I fear," Arryn whispered, "for my sweet boy Robert in the Vale, for the peace we barter with secrets, for the son this queen swells with." His fingers gripped Varys's sleeve. "And for Ned. Keep him safe, Master Whisperer. He is too honest to survive this court." "Mictenden." Varys laid a cool hand over age-spotted knuckles. "I will sing what warnings I can." Arryn forced a thin smile, then closed his eyes. 2 mornings later bells tolled high and mournful, and ravens streaked north with word of the hand's death. Rumors hatched quicker than flies on carrion. Some said Arryn passed peacefully. Others claimed a queer film in his drink, and darker speak told of an herbal infusion from the Viper Gardens of Dorne. Varys quickened his listening, yet each rumor smelled of deliberate misdirection. Too tidy, too swift. He tucked away the pattern for later, sensing the cold breath of a game restarting. With Arryn gone, Robert named Eddard Stark hand. Tywin's jaw clenched, but he bowed, request denied flickering behind green eyes like banked embers. Cersei smiled bland assent. Only Varys saw the tremor when her fingers tightened on golden goblet. The spider welcomed the new tension. Iron rubbing iron made sparks, and sparks illuminated hidden places. Ned arrived with meager escort, lone banner of the leaping direwolf snapping white on gray, and his first audience with the queen crackled with frost. Varys watched from gallery shadows as Stark offered stiff condolences. Cersei replied with honeyed formality, and both retreated behind masks thick as oak shields. 2 wolves in one den, he thought. One north forged of ice, one south trained in velvet and poison. Winter closed its fist around Dragonstone. Snow rarely exceeded dusting upon the jagged rock, yet gales whipped spray so fiercely that frost lanced the air like glass. Viserys, teeth chattering, told the rough stone faces of dragon gargoyles that soon his brother would hatch real dragons and melt the seas. Stannis received a raven sealed with a crowned stag, bearing an order. Sail to King's Landing for council, leaving Castellan Estermont in command. Duty tugged. Suspicion anchored. Before sailing, Stannis cornered Viserys in the bleak solar, eyes hooded. "Remember this," he said, voice hard as black iron. "Idle mouths undo more castles than siege towers. Temper your tongue or drown in consequence." Viserys spat a childish retort and fled, but Stannis' words left a chill deeper than winter in him. The king's babe arrived on a windy night, just shy of spring, when the moon was thin as a sickle. Labor howls echoed down labyrinthine passages, carrying beneath wooden doors and rattling candle flames. Robert drank himself near stupefaction in the small hall, flanked by Renly and a dozen lesser lords, while Tywin paced like a tethered warhorse beside golden-armored Lannister guards outside the birthing chamber. Varys lingered unseen in an alcove, listening to moans crescendo until, at last, a newborn's cry split the night. Wet applause, relieved weeping, midwife prayer. The door opened. Maester Pycelle emerged, sweat slicking his ancient brow. "A son, my lords," he croaked, strong and lusty. Robert whooped, overturning a flagon in his haste. He stumbled through corridors reeking of boiled herbs and blood-soaked linens, until he beheld the infant swaddled in cloth of gold. Tears gleamed in the king's eyes as he pressed broad lips to the crown of fine golden hair. "Joffrey," he announced hoarsely, the name chosen moons before. Cersei's smile glimmered sharp at the edges. Tywin's relief poured out in one slow exhalation. In the alcove, Varys closed his eyes and felt the shift in the weave. A golden thread knotted tight around Robert Baratheon's fat, unsuspecting heart. The next months rolled forward like a slow drumbeat. Stark, now hand, dug into ledgers and warrants, chasing whispers. Varys fed him through roundabout channels. Jon Arryn's final mutterings of, "The seed is strong," ledgers of bastards dotting the capital, the oddity of Joffrey's rare black-eyed gaze that flickered gray in certain lights. Ned Stark's earnest honesty became blade and blindfold both, guiding him deeper into labyrinth without map. Varys measured the pace, offering crumbs of clarity yet withholding the final key. Truth, he reasoned, must dawn via its own sunrises, else men distrust the light. Across the sea, Rhaenys turned 7. Elia hosted small revel in their Braavosi refuge, inviting the orphan children next door and a plump baker who sculpted sugared dragons perched upon honeycakes. Barristan carved a tiny wooden sword for her, staining the hilt with berry juice. That night, as candles guttered in sea-sweet breeze, Rhaenys whispered, "Sir Whitebeard, will we ever go home?" Selmy's heart cinched. Someday, he promised, though the word tasted like ash. He spent long hours after on the roof, staring west toward darkness. He prayed still concealed allies. Allies formed, though slowly. Oberyn Martell corresponded in code with Braavosi Sea Lord advisors, sounding the depth of their neutrality. In Old Town, Archmaester Marwyn studied the prophecy of the prince that was promised, quills scraping fervor across vellum, and his ravens flew cryptic warnings to distant towers. In the north, Benjen Stark tracked wildlings whispering of pale riders beyond the wall, though such news rarely traveled south faster than snows. Everywhere, threads tightened. Then, like a blade sliding from sheath, catastrophe struck. A hunting excursion south of the Blackwater ended with Robert Baratheon, gored by a boar fattened on fermented berries. Varys heard the frantic gallop of hooves returning at dusk, saw the blood-slick men sling the huge carcass across wagon boards, saw the king borne on litter, belly laid open in brutal wound. The spider knew fate's pivot when he saw it. Cersei took control before torchlight touched the courtyard. She barred counsel, dismissed leeches, commanded Pycelle to dose the king with milk of the poppy so thick his eyes rolled white. Varys slipped through barred corridors, listening to every groan and tearful oath as Robert, delirious, named Ned Stark Protector of the Realm, until Joffrey came of age. Paper sealed with stag wax landed in Stark's hand. Cersei smiled even then, fear glittering behind polish, for she counted on the power of a crown worn now by her son. Days blurred, the castle sealed tight. Varys moved as mist through vents and servants' passages, mapping loyalties. Tywin rode west with half the gold cloaks on urgent business that might be muster or feint. Stannis fled the city days before Robert's death, rumor seeping he carried proof of bastardy. Ned Stark plotted soft coup, trusting gold cloaks under Janos Slynt to enforce order. But Petyr Baelish whispered bribery into Slynt's eager ear, flipping allegiance like a coin. When Robert died, Bells tolled thunderous and the lion banners soared again in throne room gloom. Varys watched from high gallery as Stark strode forward, declaring royal will, only to feel absence of promised blades behind him. Cersei's voice, sweet steel. Seize him. Knights jammed spears across Stark's path. Littlefinger pressed a thin blade to Ned's throat and murmured, "I did warn you not to trust me." Joffrey perched on the Iron Throne, thin lips twisting in curious satisfaction. In that moment, Varys faced a choice: intervene, risk revealing every hidden card, or retreat and weave anew. He retreated. Webs endure by surviving flames. Ned's arrest shook pillars. Sansa's screams echoed through vaulted spaces. Arya vanished into crowd shadows. Varys ensured she vanished well, instructing a stable boy in Flea Bottom to escort the boy northward upon a wagon of turnips. Another thread tucked safe for now. From that fracture events cascaded. Tywin marched. Robb Stark called banners. Lannister outriders seized Riverland's hostages. Renly fled to Highgarden with Sir Loras, blooming rose banners of rebellion. Ravens flamed across skies like sparks before wildfire. Amid tumult, Varys' priority sharpened. The babes in Bravos must remain invisible, for if war toppled thrones, the realm would hunt any symbol of return. He bribed a Bravosi smuggler to convey Ilias' household southward toward Pentos, weaving stories of contested inheritance to mask their trail. Selmy disguised himself as a grandfatherly septa escort, robes and veils, hiding sword hilt. Rhaenys giggled at new adventure. Aegon clutched a toy dragon carved of driftwood. Oceans rolled under moonlit hull. In Dragonstone's echoing chambers, Viserys received a letter sealed with mocking lion and stag cad. The missive, penned by Cersei, proclaimed Robert dead, Joffrey crowned, and Viserys pardoned upon oath of fealty. Stannis had sailed, but Sir Axel Florent delivered the scroll. Viserys spit on the wax, railing at false mercy. Yet that night he stared long at the painted table's crownlands, small hand tracing route to King's Landing. Power beckoned like flame to moth, and his guardian maids whispered of chance. Rumor later told that a Lyseni galley slipped from Dragonstone's lee harbor, bearing a hooded youth with silver-streaken hair. Winds tugged him toward capital ablaze with war. Varys felt those winds in candle flickers of his solar. He turned pages of raven scrolls, each bearing new calamities. Whispering Wood, Jaime captured. Riverlands burning. Renly crowned in bright camp of tulips near Bitterbridge. Stannis claiming Dragonstone's chair, forging letters of bastard truth to every lord. The realm he had labored to steady now spun dizzy. Yet within chaos seeds thrived. The Targaryen children remained faceless in Pentos, training tongues in 3 languages. Oberyn's daggers gleamed but remained sheathed. Dorne watched, patient. And far to the east, in Pentos markets fragrant with cinnamon and dust, Illyrio Mopatis introduced a timid, silver-haired teenage girl to a crimson-cowled warlord from the Dothraki Sea. Varys' own missive, months old, had urged Illyrio to keep all options open. If dragons stir in shadow, nurture them. The realm may one day prefer flame to chaos. Now that letter glowed in the candle's base, edges charred, message delivered, decision pardoned by fire. Back in King's Landing, Ned Stark languished in black cells. Varys visited under guise of merciful counsel, bearing thin broth and gentler words than the jailers used. Ned's glare drilled like north wind. "Tell me, Spider, does loyalty to realm mean nothing when thrones change?" Varys replied softly, "It means everything, my lord. But realms shift like sandbars. Stand too fixed and the tide buries you." Ned's shoulders sagged under unseen snow. Varys offered escape. Take the black, guard the realms to come, yet pride anchored the wolf. Still the spider persisted, for he sensed the king's bastardy truth would soon ooze into daylight, and a live wolf speaks louder than a dead martyr. Whether the cells changed Stark's mind, only one path of tomorrow would prove. Autumn's final days dripped blood. Streets riot at news of butcher boys slain, of royal hostages taken. Joffrey, eager for applause, ordered a row of severed tongues nailed to the gate in Flea Bottom. Petty criminals, he claimed, though some claimed them singers of lewd verses about the queen's hair. Fear spread quicker than plague. Varys walked cloaked at dusk, his plump hands clutching lavender satchels of copper coins. He tossed them to beggar children to divert watchful eyes. He whispered to grandmothers about cheaper grain arriving soon from Duskendale, instructing them to sing the hand of grain's generosity. Yet no such shipment existed. He prayed rumor would keep bellies calm until real grain arrived. The first winter snow fell thin as powdered sugar on parapet of the Red Keep. The morning Ned Stark stood before the sept of Baelor under heavy guard. Varys placed himself amid crowd, throng disguised in rough spun, washed of oils, bald head hidden under tattered hood. Cersei glimmered on balcony, Joffrey beside her. Stark bowed stiffly and spoke confession rehearsed. "I plotted treason," he said. Voice low but strong. Muffled gasps rippled. Varys felt tension coil. He hoped confession would mean exile. The queen's script demanded it. But the boy king, drunk on first taste of absolute power, sneered. "Bring me his head," he cried. Sansa collapsed. Bells clanged discordant. Taunts and screams roared. The spider felt his pulse slam. Even he, who measured doom in calculus, had misjudged this boy. Ser Ilyn drew his sword. Varys ducked under elbow of smelly Mathietan sellsword. The blade flashed, the crowd bellowed, a head rolled. Blood spat across marble. Winter's first snow melted the moment it kissed redstone. In silent hysteria, Varys fled through tunnels, mind churning. Stark dead meant Robb's rage ungoverned, meant Northern War unstoppable, meant Renly's claim stronger by comparison, Stannis' letters heavier. Most of all, it meant Cersei's control over her son tenuous. A puppet whose strings rebelled. The realm balanced on knives. He spent that night alone in hidden chamber, where old Valyrian tiles blanketed walls with serpentine patterns. The candles burned down one by one, and in their flicker Varys weighed futures. Could he salvage his original design? Perhaps not. But salvage required adaptation. New strategy. Ensure war consumed itself until exhaustion begged for new symbol. One untainted by stag or lion or wolf. Across the sea, a dragon princess forged alliances. In Pentos, 2 children with elder blood played among olive groves. At Dragonstone, a silver-haired boy cunning as spite studied how kings die. If realm bled itself white, maybe, just maybe, one of those dragon seeds could germinate as savior. The idea frightened even him. Dawn bled colorless through arrow slits. Varys rose, smoothing lavender robe. He plucked quill, dipped ink, and wrote 4 letters in script small as ant tracks. One to Illyrio, urging careful nurture of the silver-haired girl's claim. One to Selmy, Elias Whitebeard, warning of fresh hunts for dragon scions. One to a baron, reminding him vengeance breeds opportunity. And one to Tyrion Lannister, held captive by Catelyn Stark at the Eyrie, hinting at truths that might yet overturn betrayals. Each letter implied hope and threat both, as every good whisper should. When he sealed the final parchment, he pressed ring to wax and whispered to empty room. "Chaos is a ladder." Yes, but even ladders require walls. I must keep the walls standing until the right climber appears. His own voice echoed thin. He almost laughed at the hubris layered in that vow. Yet, unless someone believed in eventual peace, war would remain perennial. Outside, bells tolled again, not mourning this time but heralding procession. Joffrey's first ride as true king, golden crown hammered freshly to fit his narrow brow. Varys listened to clamor swell, reflecting that songs already changed. The small folk would sing of the boy king's justice. Northern bards would howl of southern treachery. Dornish poets would sneer behind veils about lion cubs devouring wool. Truth wore many cloaks. He straightened, tucked letters into hidden pockets inside robe lining, and stepped into corridors swirling with servants and sigils. There were whispers to sow, rumors to cradle, fires to dampen or stoke. The web trembled, alive. 3 nights later, he boarded a Lyseni cog in Blackwater Rush, disguised as merchant factor, ostensibly to inspect spice imports. In truth, he meant to cross waves to Pentos for single meeting with Illyrio, to be sure dragon seeds lay still beneath protective soil. The river breeze carried scent of brine and pine and distant smoke from burning river barges. Varys, standing at stern, watched the towers recede, thinking how fragile they looked against gray horizon. When cabin boy asked his name, the eunuch smiled. "I am but a humble servant of kingdoms, lad. Call me no one." The boy laughed, not understanding. The ship's sail caught wind. Ropes groaned. The city behind shimmered like mirage. Night deepened. Stars ignited overhead, cold pinpricks over restless sea. Varys, alone on deck, tucked lavender sleeves around arms and allowed himself a single memory of a child sold on a mirrorish stage, voice stolen, destiny rewritten by cruelty. That child had survived, had built webs from pain, had decided, in silent vow, that no other innocent would burn if his silks could stop the match. Whether he succeeded mattered less than striving. Waves slapped hull. Somewhere ahead lay new storms, new chances. He inhaled salt air and let it fill a heart that must endure. Behind him, King's Landing glittered. Ahead the narrow sea roared, and upon its rolling expanse destiny's threads stretched, silk, steel, shadow, awaiting the patient hands of the spider. Okay. The wood-smoke sky above King's Landing flushed move before dawn, trailing threads of charcoal ash from the chimneys that pocked Visenya's hill. Beneath that sober light, the bells of the great sept told a slow, measured cadence, no longer mourning Eddard Stark, but announcing daily prayers for the souls of noblemen already marching to fresh wars. In the bowels of the castle, the thin bronze tubes Varys had designed for his little birds shuddered as messages whistled through them. Questions, warnings, half-remembered names. Most were grim. The North gathered behind Robb Stark, and the direwolf banner loped south across the neck. Stannis had raised fiery sigils on Dragonstone, and declared each golden-haired child of Cersei bastard born of treason. Renly, blooming green roses and bright laughter, assembled a court on wheels that rolled up from High Garden toward Storm's End. Every raven that reached the Red Keep carried another declaration, another grievance, another call to arms. Joffrey could not read half the scrolls before tossing them to serve as torches for the throne room braziers. In those same dark corridors, Sir Barristan Selmy, stripped of cloak by a petulant king, left the city alone, neither hunted nor hailed. His plate and honor as battered as the white cloak, he refused to cast aside. The gold cloaks watched him pass without challenge. Slynt had orders only to guard gates against wolves. When the old knight turned his back on the gates, Varys observed from a turret slit and murmured a quiet promise. "I shall see you again, sir." Promise and prayer, together on a single breath. South of the city, the King's Road sprouted thousands of new graves. Little moons of freshly turned earth, each with a broken spear or hacked banner staff thrust into its brow. The land between Stony Sept and Dee and Duskendale began to look like a garden of jagged teeth. Every column that clinked along the Queen's Road bore its own cooks and smiths, but few carried proper grave diggers. When battle claimed a company, a shallow pit sufficed, sometimes not even limed. Wild dogs grew bold, circling camps at dusk. Ravens blackened the leafless oaks where they perched, their croaking a broken hymn above the tents. Far east across the narrow sea, Varys stepped onto Pentoshi cobbles on a night peeled raw by rain. Illyrio Mopatis met him in an arcaded courtyard fragrant with musk and thunderwet roses. Together they drank mulled wine beside a brazier, steam curling around Illyrio's gold-linked beard. The Magister bragged of a miracle. A silver-haired girl who had survived plague in Volantis and now spoke Dothraki more clearly than some horse lords. Beside her, he said, stood a Cal's bloodrider willing to pledge his Arak if the right winds carried them west. Varys listened, gauging every boast, measuring the distance between Illyria's hunger and his caution. At dawn he found Elia and the children in a villa, draped in filmy orange silks that fluttered like dying embers whenever sea breeze threaded the hallways. Aegon crawled toward the sunlight spilling across talon-etched tiles, still too young to walk unaided, while Rhaenys traced the curving neck of a marble swan fountain with one shy finger. Elia rose from a cushioned divan, her body thin but her eyes bright as polished copper. "The realm?" she asked in a brittle hush. "Still bleeding," Varys answered. He watched Rhaenys touch water with a timid fingertip, and felt something hitch in his chest. Fear, hope, some hydra birthed of both. But a bleeding realm sometimes welcomes the surgeon's knife more than the butcher's cleaver. "We must keep you hidden until the land remembers it is a body, not a battlefield." Elia frowned. "Bodies die bleeding while surgeons debate." "Sometimes," Varys agreed. He let his robes drop heavy upon the tiles, so she would hear the weight of silk and coin he carried. "And sometimes the surgeon must slip unseen into the sick room, else the butchers club him senseless." She laughed, more sigh than mirth, and bent to kiss Aegon's pale hair. "If we must remain ghosts, at least teach the children to haunt well." He promised lessons and left before dusk, a satchel of Braavosi coin weights slung beneath his cloak. Gifts to bribe silence at every checkpoint on the long road south to Lys, where a nameless ship waited with fresh papers for Far. The Belmore family, traders in figs. A new name bought a longer life, he told himself. Though names were as thin as parchment when swords cleaved flesh. In King's Landing, Littlefinger replaced dead ministers with men who owed him favors, measured in whores and wagers, rather than blood. A royal decree announced Ser Janos Slint's elevation to Lord of Harrenhal, and gossips cackled at the snake devouring an ancient ruin. Lord Tywin, entrenched at Harrenhal in truth, cared little. His riders burned out sceptries along the Tumblestone, punishing the Riverlands for every slight. Ravens told of the Whispering Wood, of Jaime captured, and his bright armor dulled by northern mud. Cersei's shriek echoed through the keep's high windows on the morn the news arrived. Joffrey ordered 10 beggars whipped, for the crime of being eyesores, but their blood did nothing to dim his mother's terror. One night, as Cersei paced the small council chamber alone, her slippered feet painting frantic crescents across polished marble, Varys materialized near the hearth. She started, glared. "Why do you lurk like a ghoul spider?" "Ghosts often know the safest paths," he replied. "Safest?" She laughed, brittle. "My brother rots in northern chains. My father butchers half the realm. Wolves scratch at Moat Cailin, and Littlefinger whispers treason behind velvet drapes. Show me safety." "None?" Varys fluttered a hand toward the glowing logs. "Keep the realm burning no brighter than those embers. A managed glow, no roaring pyre, trade wine for wolves on the King's Road. Promise Jaime's life for peace." She rounded on him, gold hair whipping. "Promise? To traitors? I will have Robb Stark's head on a spike." "My lady, kings may demand heads," Varys murmured, "but kingdoms run on hearts and bellies. So long as wolves believe the cub's life matters, they will bleed to fetch him. Give them hope of ransom, and they may pause to bargain." Her nostrils flared, but the argument pierced her fury. "Jaime is ransom for realm peace." "For pause," Varys corrected. "Peace requires more coin than one night." She sank into the high-backed chair Ned Stark once occupied. Shields carved with falcons and lions ringed the walls like silent witnesses. "You speak as if I still command this chaos." "You command the crown," Varys said, soft. "Chaos kneels to crowns if crowns feed it aptly." She stared at the crackle of the fire, the dance of shadows. "At last? Then bring me terms the wolves will heed, and perhaps I will leash my boy." Varys bowed. "I shall whisper with Winter, your grace." The next day a courier slipped a parchment into the gauntleted fist of Robb Stark's outrider near the twins. Words of hostage exchange, grain shipments, eased levies. The courier's head arrived back in a wicker basket, body flung to crows. Cersei burned the basket, hysterical, and Joffrey ordered yet more beggars stripped and flogged. The begging pennies clattered like tears across the cobbles. By then Varys had sailed north to Hartshorn, disguised as a Pentoshi spice factor seeking river routes. He traveled by a covered barge to Saltspear, taking store of fisherfolk rumors. Wolf banners massing, an ancient weirwood dream of ravens too many to count, eyes red as ruin. He sent coded letters south. The storm sings of snowmen. No one reading the words would suspect they told of a northern boy king grown bold, marching south with gray deerwolves, the size of war horses. In Pentos, Illyrio's miracle girl crossed paths with Selmy, who traveled incognito now as Arstan Whitebeard. The Magister saw advantage in pairing the silver-haired princess with dragon children younger still. Varys' earlier letters hinted war would soon exhaust Westeros, softening its immunity to exiles. Illyrio redoubled his flattery, fed the girl stories of a realm robbed from her grandmother's womb. When Varys returned from Hartshorn weeks later, he joined them for dawn tea beneath a silk canopy, and watched the girl feed honeyed locusts to a hatchling dragon she called Viserion. Its scales were the color of untarnished ivory, and the crackle of its small wings reminded the eunuch of parchment curling over candles. "Dragons hatch in fire," he observed. "Hard to find fire in Pentos." Illyrio chuckled, jowls quivering. The girl walked into her husband's funeral pyre. "The world provides miracles when men shape them." Varys inclined his head at the girl. "And what miracle do you seek now, Daenerys Stormborn?" She met his gaze across the tiny dragon clinging to her wrist. "Not miracle," she said. "Justice." He considered the steel behind that single word, and thought of baby Aegon learning to walk, of Rhaenys stroking marble swans, of Viserys nursing grudges under Stannis' cold watch. Justice had many faces. Some sweet, some monstrous. "Justice," he echoed, "should be served warm like tea. Two scalding spills on even the righteous." She smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you will help me pour." He left the canopy unresolved, but his mind weighed new possibilities. Dragons under a determined queen offered a paradox: salvation for the many, ruin for the few, or vice versa, depending where the first flame fell. Still, the web thrummed at the thought. On his return voyage, Varys learned that Stannis had smashed Renly beneath ghostly shadow on the Blackwater, or so frightened camp whispers declared. Sails of green and gold collapsed like uprooted willows, and the Tyrell host bent knee to the lions in frantic alliance, sealed by Margaery's promise to wed Joffrey, should the war turn favorable. Highgarden's wheat rolled north in barges, feeding a city half mad with hunger. Bells rang in truculent tribute. Survivors celebrated any grain, any respite. Yet Stannis endured, his galleys cutting north along the coast. Varys raced ahead of tidings, reaching King's Landing before Davos' first sail knifed around Massey's Hook. He met with Tyrion, now the acting hand in Tywin's absence, and found the dwarf pacing the Hand's Tower, counting casks of wildfire like beads on a prayer bracelet. "There's enough here to bake the riverbed into emerald glass," Tyrion confessed. "I prefer my wine less explosive." Varys advised distribution of the wildfire among different alchemists' cellars to minimize catastrophe. But Tyrion's plan trumped caution. He filled an ancient Drummond with the green liquid, set it adrift, and let Stannis' fleet ram the trap. On the black night of second moon of summer, fires blossomed along the Blackwater like emerald roses, each petal a shrieking sail, each stamen a man aflame. Varys watched the pyre from atop the city walls, fetid smoke curling around his wig. He remembered Aerys' whispered mania, burned them all, and felt both dread and strange satisfaction that at least the flames served survival, not madness. In the chaos, Davos' smuggler instincts saved Stannis' life, dragging the would-be king ashore, half burnt and half drowned, where Saladhor Saan's remnants spirited him to Dragonstone. Rumors spread that the flames melted Stannis' stone resolve, leaving him half ghoul under Rhaelor's red shadow. Others swore they saw a stag-crowned shadow slip across the Blackwater before the tide turned red. The Tyrells arrived on the golden crest of victory. Tywin rode beside Mace, their joined banners hammering glory into the stunned city. Joffrey preened atop the battlements, but Cersei's face pinched tight. Tommen had fallen ill during siege, and the maesters whispered the boy's lungs rattled like paper. Mothers could love more than one child, yet each breath Tommen fought stole attention from the crown Cersei had polished for Joffrey. At the celebration feast, Varys stood behind Tywin's chair, measuring alliances. Tyrion eyed his bride-to-be Sansa with something like pity. Littlefinger toasted every victory with oil-slick smiles, and Margaery, resplendent in green samite, coaxed shy grins out of Tommen as the boy coughed into a lace kerchief. The spider considered the queen's faltering hold on her children, and thus on Tywin, and wondered whether two queens at court might split the lion pride. He slipped away before dawn, descending into the tunnels below the Red Keep where wildfire residue dripped like witchlight from cracks. There he met Shae, the whore Tyrion treasured. She carried a parchment with a faint, broken wax seal. His bird inside the veil had learned of Tyrion's secret marriage contract, forged in a brothel by torchlight. Sansa now promised to the imp. Varys read the scrawl and sighed. A lion cub with wolf's bride promised chaotic litters. He thanked Shae, slipped her a purse of silver, and turned toward the secret shafts leading into Maegor's Holdfast. In the queen's chambers, Cersei dozed beside Tommen's cot, hair unbound, face slack with exhaustion. Varys stood over the sleeping child, listening to the labored rasp of each breath. Messy curls clung to Tommen's sweaty brow, and small fingers clutched the lion plush Jaime, once won at Joust of the Dancing Spring. The spider placed two fingers against the boy's wrist. Steady, but weak. He whispered, "Live long, little cub. The realm has too many ghosts." When he withdrew, Cersei stirred, half waking. "Who's there?" she murmured. Varys melted between tapestries before her eyes opened fully, leaving only the faint rustle of velvet wings. While King's Landing licked its wounds and Tyrell roses entwined golden lions on every tapestry, Ravensport floorboards groaned under the weight of northern vengeance. Robb Stark's host pushed Riverland's victories into the Westerlands, seizing grain stores, torching watchtowers, freeing prisoners who hailed the young wolf as king of an older, sterner realm. Jaime, exchanged for Willem Lannister and a chest of gemstone apologies, rode again under white flag to parley for Cersei. Robb met him in a half-ruined sept, where broken statues lay like fallen giants. They spoke in low tones amid shattered saints. Jaime offered sweetened words, yet each honey drop dripped acid when it touched the stone. Robb demanded daughters of Tywin as hostages, no less. Jaime laughed. Parley ended in steel-edged silence, and the gods wept dust from cracked stone eyelids. When word reached King's Landing, Tywin's reply was curt. "If wolves want lionesses, break their teeth first." He dispatched Gregor Clegane with 2,000 reavers to ice the neck with flames. "Burned fields yield no grain," he reasoned. But each burnt cottage birthed a dozen spears sworn to vengeance. Varys sent quiet reports of the mounting reaver crimes to Oberyn Martell, signing them with a pale blossom of wax in place of any seal. Dorne bristled, remembering Elia. On Dragonstone, Stannis' Crimson Priestess gave birth to a second shadow, some said, and sent it across waves to slay his usurping younger brother Renly a second time. In bandit's guise near Bitterbridge, though others insisted Storm's End's rightful lord still lived disguised among his Rainbow Guard. Rumor no longer needed truth. It had learned to fly on broken wings. Varys let each rumor loose, steering them through whisper tubes to confuse and confound. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Daenerys hatchlings doubled in size, feasting on goat and dog beneath wax-bright stars above the red waste. She marched into Korth, where warlocks offered illusions, and a pure-born council tried to ensnare her dragons behind jade doors. She escaped with half a dozen sorrowful men dead behind her and a lesson on trusting doors that shone too brightly. Varys read the coded dispatch from Illyrio. The dragon learns caution, and allowed himself a rare, small smile. Yet his smile died when another letter arrived from Braavos. Aegon fell ill with a wasting fever, the healer uncertain. Rhaenys wept each night. Barristan begged knowledge of maesters skilled in Westerosi humors. Varys' quill scratched names of physicians in Tyrosh, Laias, and Old Volantis, along with heavy purses of coin for their secrecy. Some webs ran threads too fine even for him to guarantee. He could only strengthen the strands where they quivered. In King's Landing, the weight of victory and famine fought nightly beneath the city's slate roofs. Tyrell Greenham arrived but vanished into counting-house ledgers. Gold cloaks escorted wagons to castle granaries, yet common pots remained empty. Riots flared beneath the steps of Baelor. Bones littered alleys like white confetti. Tyrion walked the streets cloaked, listening to curses carved in hunger, and asked Varys how long a throne could sit atop a starving mountain. "As long as that mountain sees no bigger feast elsewhere," the spider answered. One evening, Tyrion summoned Varys to the Tower of the Hand and poured 2 cups of summer wine. "I may die tomorrow," he announced. "Father's returned, and I suspect he finds my style of governance untidy. In case of fatal mishap, I would like the history books corrected." He handed a scroll. It contained a concise testimony of wildfire strategy, listing his name beside the decision to use it. "Make sure it's known," Tyrion said, "that I saved this city. Perhaps Sansa will read it one day and think kindly of me once before hating me forever." "Histories," Varys said, unrolling the parchment to glimpse crisp script. "Air written by quills that bend to victors. I shall try to keep this one straight." "Venitium." "Do," Tyrion replied. "Straight things are so rare in King's Landing." They toasted. Tyrion coughed on the wine's afterburn. "Speaking of rare, do you know what became of Arya Stark? My father thinks her corpse is for the north. Some say she rode north with Yoren," Varys offered. "Some?" Tyrion echoed, raising one eyebrow over mismatched eyes. "But you are not some. If the girl lives, keep her safe. We need as many counterweights to Cersei's madness as the realm can spare." Varys inclined his head. "If I find a lone wolf cub, I will guide her away from cages." "Do." Tyrion drained his cup. "Else the winter my sister calls may never end." Winter indeed bared its teeth within moons. White ravens flew from the citadel. The riverlords found ice-rimming cattails along the forks of the Trident before autumn's end. Farmers who had not fled wore carved loaves from last year's grain, counting seeds instead of planting. In the Vale, Lysa Arryn sealed the bloody gate, yet snowmelt silenced mountain springs. Hunger carried further than armies. Varys watched supplies shift. Tyrell wagons had their shipments the moment frost kissed the King's Road. The Spider's informers in Old Town saw granary doors padlocked. Across Dorne, winter meant only scant chill. Yet the Martells hoarded their pepper and oranges in subterranean vaults. Every man saved for his own. In the smoky gloom of a tavern behind the Chequy gates, Varys met a ragged brother of the Night's Watch who had traveled the whorehouse circuit south, begging men to take the black. "The dead ride," the ranger whispered, voice raw, doughty, blue eyes in the woods. "We saw them at the Fist before the snow took the trail." His hands shook around a chipped cup of watered ale. Few offered coin or comfort. Most laughed him away. Varys slipped him silver stags and asked for every detail. The ranger spoke of horns 3 blown, of pale spiders big as hounds, of a boy named Snow who fought with a sword burning like sunset. The spider's mind raced, piecing rumor of the bastard Jon into a northern dawn of black wings and red fire. "Carry word to Lord Jor still?" the ranger pleaded. Varys promised ravens, though he knew Castle Black had likely none to spare. That night, Varys walked the moonlit battlements and stared north. Beyond those walls and all political webs brewed a storm older than thrones. He whispered to the silent dark, "If the wall fails, no crown will matter." Some truths dwarfed even cunning. Yet, on the morrow letters called him back to mortal intrigues. One bore Gold Company seal. "Aegro convinces brothers we march soon. Blackfire blood or no? The boy inspires." Aegon's fever had broken. Now he raced wooden practice swords against Rhaenys in Pentoshi Gardens. The Free Company sought cause. Young dragons welcomed swords. Varys closed his eyes and saw Westeros aflame. Green wildfire, red dragonfire, white frostfire. Flames of every hue, licking every border. He penned a curt reply, "Wait," then added more silk around iron. "When the lion eats the wolf and stag both, strike, not sooner." Across the city, Joffrey celebrated his 16th name day with a mock battle of severed dwarf heads. Trophies from a butcher's cart painted as traitors. One landed in Sansa's lap, staining her gown the color of heartbreak. Varys slipped away before the first laugh died. His patience stretched tauter than any bowstring. Rage threatened subtlety, a dangerous state for a spider. He spent hours cataloging facts, repeating one mantra. The realm first, always the realm. and then the wheel turned again. At a feast welcoming Mace, Tyrell's cousins, Joffrey choked on a jewel-encrusted cup of fortified wine. His face darkened plum purple, eyes bulging like overripe berries, clawed hands knocking fruit platters aside. The court screamed. Cersei shrieked at Tyrion. The dwarf's cup lay overturned, yet so did Grand Maester Pycelle's. Amid hysteria, Varys crouched near the corpse, noting, lips blistered not like strangling but poisoning. Color too quick, death too sudden. Near the dais, Sansa vanished in crowd surge, almost as though guided. That night, chaos devoured the keep. Cersei locked Tyrells in guest rooms, naming them regicidal. Tywin barked orders even he could barely contain. Tyrion arrested, chains clanking ugly against mosaic floors. Varys watched ironed close around half the court and recognized the hour he had long prepared for. A lion's head severed, 2 crowns empty, winter falling, threads unraveled at last. He descended to a black door vault beneath Maegor's holdfast, a chamber almost no living soul knew. Inside, dusty coffers held ledgers of older regimes, Gaunt or Gardner, kingdoms now bones. Varys lit a lone lantern and spread parchments across a stone desk. He opened a bundle of letters sealed with many sigils. Mormont, Dane, Tarth, Reed, allies untested but planted. He drew fresh quills, dipped red ink, and wrote instructions. To Prince Aegon, sail east of Valyria, gather the wings promised. Do not turn toward Westeros until the rivers freeze in south. To Queen Daenerys, the realm cracks. Choose west, not south. Dragons must land where lions sleep. To Lord Snow of the Watch, fires burn in Kingtown. Ice walks north. You must knit the watch to the realm, or none shall survive. He rolled each parchment, pressed wax with a seal carved from weirwood long ago. A silk-spun spider encircling the 7-pointed star. The messages would ride swift dromons, free of banners or suspicion, borne by innkeepers, smiths' sons, thieves. The realm's veins. Footsteps echoed beyond the vault. A low whistle. His own signal. He doused lantern and slipped into wall niche as Baelish glided in. Eyes glitter sharp despite turmoil above. Our king is dead, spider. So he is. You weave new webs already. Always. Baelish laughed. Soft. Such industry. Yet chaos is a pit, not a ladder, if one cannot climb. Careful the fall. Varys stepped into half-light. When the pit swallows all, even climbers need bridges. You'll build them. Someone must. Baelish's smile gleamed like knife edge. Perhaps we share need. A queen in Highgarden wants the game reset. A bastard in the north may prove lever. Shall we cooperate? He extended a hand. Varys considered the pale fingers, the eyes too quick. Allies of convenience could strangle as deftly as foes. Yet, threads sometimes required knots. He touched Baelish's hand. Brief. For now. They parted without oath. 2 spiders spinning separate snares in the same dark. Up above, torches sputtered along the outer ward as Cersei paraded Tyrion in chains. Margaery prayed high in the sept, voice shaking upon each amen. Tommen, small and pale, wept into Sir Jacelyn Bywater's cloak. The new regent they crowned him within hours, a boy king who clung to his mother's skirts. The realm gasped, battered hearts thrumming like wounded birds. Dawn broke blood orange over Blackwater Rush. Varys watched from a window slit, an old ache under his ribs. One more day, one more thread. He breathed deep. The wind carried chill enough to sting. Somewhere beyond sight, Rhaenys danced wooden swords with Barristan. Viserys sharpened ambition against Dragonstone stone. Daenerys taught hatchlings to hunt lambs. Jon Snow stood atop an icy wall, looking south to fires, north to shadows, and at the bottom of each loom, invisible to all but fate, spiders labored. Varys turned from the red dawn and set about his tasks. For though thrones topple and kings choke, the realm must stand, or ashes reign alone. And if silk and whisper were the only mortar left, He would weave until every breath fled his body, trusting someday a kinder wind would carry a stronger song across the seven kingdoms. A.K. Dawn lingered bruised and uncertain above King's Landing on the morning after Joffrey's death, every stone in the Red Keep seeming to pulse with the ache of unanswered questions. Wind rattled shutters that had remained unlatched in the mad rush of night, and cinders from guttering torches drifted like black snow across the torchlit courtyards. Somewhere within the labyrinth of halls, Cersei Lannister's rage resounded, a raw animal sound that trembled along tapestries and struck each servant bare-handed with fear. She had spent the hours of darkness pacing the Queen's ballroom, knocking over candelabra, shredding the silken ribbons that still fluttered from the name-day feast, until the place looked like an overturned hive. Her eyes were twin bursts of wildfire as she issued order after order. Sansa Stark to be found and seized alive, Tyrion to be tried before the moon waned. Every vintner in the city questioned to the marrow. But grief had hollowed her voice, and every new command sounded thinner than the last, as though her throat could not decide whether to scream or break. At first light she demanded that her father sit upon the Iron Throne beside Tommen until the boy's fever broke. Tywin in turn commanded that the Mistress of Kitchens feed the court on plain porridge as penance for the poison hidden in sweet cream and Dornish wine. The morning thus bloomed bleak and hungry. By third bell, a line of gray-faced small folk snaked half a league from the mud gate, each one clutching wilted flowers or scraps of prayer ribbon, desperate to glimpse the new boy king who lay as pale as linen and twice as fragile behind the shuttered windows of Maegor's Holdfast. Rumor, as tireless as plague, raced ahead of fact. Some whispered that Joffrey's last scream had cursed the city, that his soul clawed inside the walls seeking vengeance. Others insisted the Tyrell Queen had brewed the death herself, bottling vengeance for Margaery's spurned maidenhood. Yet mingled amid the fear, there fluttered a strange, guilty relief. King Joffrey's cruelty had become a daily torment, and death, however horrifying, had ended the lash of his caprice. Few dared confess such blasphemy aloud, but the silence on men's tongues was as eloquent as any prayer. Beneath the tower that once housed the Hand, Tyrion Lannister sat alone in a cell that reeked of mildew and damp straw, the iron dew's tiny grate framing a wedge of torchlight. Each drip of water along the outer stair struck stone like slow, deliberate applause. His wrists were manacled, though they'd given him quills and parchment for confession. A joke if ever there was. He had begun by scribbling bawdy limericks to pass the time, but the quills soon bled darker thoughts, strategies mapped in circles and arrows, the exact count of gold cloaks he might bribe if he lived long enough, and the secret route from this cell to the Sepulchre Tunnel. Varys had once shown him during a drunken night of boasts about rats that walk as men. Outside, a procession of accusers gathered. Cersei had named the Kettle Master, the Tasters, the Pie Maid, the Cupbearer, half the Alchemist's Guild, even poor drunken Dantos, and of course Tyrion. Yet each interrogation yielded only fresh fear and fresh silence. The king's cup had passed between too many trembling hands, and poison needed only one. Pycelle, still limping from the chain Tyrion had once pilfered, swore blind the crystals of Strangler were traceable to Sothrios. When asked how such an exotic venom had crossed the narrow sea, the old goat looked meaningfully at Tyrion's signature upon past import licenses. The dwarf noted the performance coldly. Pycelle was repaying humiliation with lethal interest. Still, court whispers told of a Dornish necklace shattered in the chaos, purple amethysts skittering across marble, and someone clever had slipped one gem into the wine. Tyrion marked that too. Every piece mattered, for he could feel the noose tightening through stone, the faint tremor beneath his boots whenever the city roared outside his window, the way jailers avoided meeting his mismatched eyes. His champion? Bronn had vanished among the sellswards, sniffing the wind like a dog, choosing safer streets. Podrick alone remained loyal, smuggling in news one tremulous whisper at a time. But Podrick was a boy, and the games ahead would eat boys whole. Tyrion closed his eyes and listened to distant bells toll high in the rookery, a morning knell wrapped in fear. So, he muttered at the ceiling. "I saved the city from Stannis so my sister could murder me without interruption. Glorious. Nan." Varys for his part slipped through King's Landing with steps as soundless as last year's snow. A lavender-scented handkerchief pressed off into his nose to mask the city's sudden rot. He spent the days after the king's feast moving between alcoves that no longer felt safe, quietly shepherding terrified servants toward fallback holes in Flea Bottom, burning message scrolls on rooftop braziers, and bribing the alchemists to mislay certain ledgers. Like a master cook tasting stew, he tested the mood of every faction. Tyrell riders in the stable yard, mace grinning too wide. Tywin's grizzled captains hunched over lists of grain levies. The High Septon murmuring with silent sisters about burying a royal dead in stone dust, blessed with rare unguents. Each taste confirmed the same flavor, panic laced with ambition. Death had unmasked the frayed threads of alliance. Now every lord tugged his own corner, hoping the tapestry would unravel for his benefit. By night, the spider returned to his hidden rookery below the throne room, where bronze tubes angled into every wall cavity. He pressed an ear to one, and listened to Cersei weeping through clenched teeth as she sat at Tommen's bedside. Another carried Tywin's voice, dull with calculation, detailing to Kevan how the boy king's coronation must wait until the fever passed lest grief appear weakness. A third faintly echoed Margaery's fervent prayers, half piety, half performance, for the soul of her dear departed king. Varys mapped each sound on an invisible chart until the keep resembled a hive whose queen had turned her stinger inward. Only then did he unroll a sheet of vellum and scrawl the first of many urgent letters. Subtle warnings to Oberyn Martell. The lions bleed and blame the roses. Tread softly lest your sister's screams echo anew. Patient counsel to Illyrio. Delay the sails, storms rise, and a single curt directive to the captain of the Shy Maid, anchored in the stepstones. Folding the parchments, he sealed each with the wax of a faceless spider. Then he sat, fingers steepled, long past midnight, until the silence told him it was time to choose which candle to snuff and which to keep alive. 2 days later, the Dornish embassy arrived in full regalia. 30 spearwives in copper scale, and Prince Oberyn at their head astride a smoky red courser. The city thrummed with anticipation, some for justice, some for spectacle, many because rumors of the prince's venomous audacity promised diversion from hunger. Cersei received him in the throne room, draped in a gown of sunset silk, Tommen pale at her side like a ghost clinging to her skirts. Oberyn's bow arched low yet leisurely, as though he meant to remind every eye that his sister's children had once bowed in chains before this same court. Tywin watched, granite carved in lion's likeness, while Pycelle recited a long homily on peace. When the maester droned past the third invocation of the Seven's mercy, Oberyn cut in with a smile sharp as a sand snake's fang. "Some of us prefer justice swifter than 7 generations of prayer, my lord." That line darted through the hall. Petals of tension quivered. Varys, listening from his hidden gallery, savored the note. He knew poisoning accusations ran red between Highgarden and Sunspear. He suspected Oberyn's arrival would calibrate the scales in ways even Littlefinger could not chart. And indeed, by candlelight that night, he glimpsed Baelish and the Red Viper whispering beneath a moonlit balcony, words as soft as spider silk. The game boards were multiplying. Tyrion's trial commenced in the Hall of the Faith, beneath soaring pillars ringed by crystal sconces that cast rainbows onto black marble. Rainbows macabre, in a hall dedicated now to blame. Ser Meryn's booming voice recounted how the imp had once threatened the king. Pycelle clutched a sachet of dried strangler, insisting Tyrion had requisitioned it from the stores. Even the fool Moonboy claimed Hyde overheard plots in the privy. Sansa's seat sat empty, a silent accusation. Tyrion heckled at first. "If I wished to kill kings, I'd not leave you a lot alive." But each testimony chipped his armor until silence shielded him better. Oberyn entered unannounced on the third day, red silks clinging to lean shoulders, and volunteered to champion the dwarf's innocence. "One murderer knows another, my lords, and I do not see it in him." Cersei smirked, for she had prepared her own champion. Sir Gregor Clegane, fresh from a winter raid in the Riverlands, bigger and more brutal than tales allowed. The duel was set beneath a sky the color of old brass. Varys observed from a barred gallery, his pulse a measured drum. He had once told Illyrio that a single spear could change kingdoms. What he witnessed felt like a prophecy unfolding at sword edge. Oberyn dancing, serpent quick, spear flashing arcs of sunlight. The mountain stalking, each blow a boulder hurled. For a heartbeat, justice seemed possible when Oberyn's spearhead split the mountain's helm, and red sprayed gold. The court gasped. Then fortune rolled, cruel and casual. Clegane's gauntlet closed around Oberyn's ankle, dashed him down, crushed hope with bone-splitting force. The scream that followed etched stone. Tyrion covered his eyes. Varys inhaled sorrow and the bitter copper of inevitability. Victory, declared the Seven. Death, whispered the Spider, carries its own seeds. The sentence fell sharp as any headsman's stroke. Tyrion to die at sunrise atop Beller's steps. Yet when the last gavel cracked, Varys slipped beneath the hall, found his favorite rat door, and moved as if every step were pre-written. That night, torches sputtered along stone passageways that smelled of centuries. A jailer thought he glimpsed a bald eunuch in lavender passing beyond a turning, but the flicker of lamp made ghosts of certainty. Soon Tyrion stood blinking in a low vault where dragon skulls once glowered. The chain at his wrists jingled a bewildered rhythm. Varys guided him in silence to a litter of half-collapsed barrels, pried up a stone, and revealed a tunnel redolent of salt air. "My debt to the realm is paid only when it still beats," he murmured. Tyrion's reply wobbled between gratitude and stunned awe, but words scattered when Varys pressed a scroll into his palm. Directions, a name, the phrase, "Young Griff." Above them, Tywin stood from his wine to relieve himself, and there, in a tangle of crossbow bolts, Kinslayer's choice, the lion's roar died. Tyrion emerged from darkness, a changed creature, fate hitching a new breath. When Varys stepped back into moonlight, the bells clanged. Gossip outran feet. Tywin Lannister, Hand of the King, General of the West, Architect of Victory, lay slumped over a privy, a quarrel through lung and bowels. The keep's corridors erupted. Steel on stone, dwarfs blamed, ghosts blamed, and spiders unseen. Varys did not linger to taste chaos. He glided toward the docks where a sloop named Maiden's Reprieve rocked against pilings. Its captain owed favors from Braavos to Bryn. The eunuch boarded last, tossing a purse to a dockboy who would swear he never saw the spider leap. As oars dipped, the city's lanterns dimmed behind, and cries of King Tommen warred with wails for his grandsire. Varys pressed a hand to cold rail, eyes on black water curl. In 4 heartbeats he set aside grief for the lion he had once respected. Better to mourn later, perhaps never. Now the game spun faster. Their vessel hugged shorelines south, stopping at unnamed coves. Beneath canvas, Tyrion brooded, half drunk, chain rash marking wrists. Varys fed him fragments. How Aegon Targaryen had not died but been spirited away. How the Golden Company now looked to Westeros broken. How Daenerys Stormborn walked with dragons beyond the Dothraki Sea. Choose, he urged the dwarf, between rebuilding and revenge. Tyrion, ever contrary, chose both. At Volantis, they parted. The Spider east with Illyrio's fat Dromons. Tyrion upriver with a half-maester named Haldon. The promise of secrets ahead. Varys watched him go, and wondered whether a dwarf's cunning might yet mend or ruin all. The free cities hummed like summer flies around honeyed rumor. Dragons, a one-eared kraken, princes of prophecy. In Pentos, Rhaenys learned water dancing from a Braavosi swordsman, while Aegon sparred against unsullied veterans, his knuckles cracked but his eyes bright with purpose. Varys arrived to find the boy painting a map of Storm's End on rough parchment, planning his first strike. "The Stormlands will remember loyal blood," he said. Varys corrected gentle. The Stormlands remembered the loudest thunder, nothing more. Still, hope shone in the lad's grin. The spider did not dampen it. Better to shape steel than rust. They spent nights comparing banners, listing sworn houses, guessing which riverlord tired first of war. And quietly Varys sent ravens to Dorne. If a dragon prince sought allies, might a sand snake answer? Replies came cryptic and sharp. Vengeance and justice ride twin horses. We will know which reins you tug. For now, enough. Across the Jade Sea, Daenerys held Meereen, a city sick with slavers' ghosts and plagued with corpses nailed to mileposts. Her dragons outgrew chains, their hunger scorching barns, yet she refused to let them roam. Varys' little birds perched on sailors' shoulders carried news. A masked harpy bled unsullied patrols in moonlit alleys. Sellsword captains jostled for her favor. Wise men claimed Astapor had risen anew under a Butcher King. The spider wove these strands into letters bound for Illyrio and for Aegon both. The queen holds the spear. The boy, the shield. Unite or perish. Whether pride would bend remained unseen. Dragons were creatures of want. They clung to their desires even when fire burned them for it. North of the wall, Jon Snow gazed from the frosted heights at storms boiling violet over the haunted forest. He knew nothing of princes or spider webs. His world was the clean crunch of ice under boot, the wail of wind through arrow slits, the quiet presence of a direwolf whose breath smoked silver in starlight. But even here Varys' threads brushed the edge. Maester Aemon, frail and blind, read aloud a letter sealed with weirwood wax. The realm cripples itself. Remember your vows. Jon carried those words into council with wildling chiefs newly sworn beneath Castle Black's battered banners. Let the south drown in crowns, Tormund muttered. We've mountains to fight. Yet Jon sensed oceans moved by distant moons he could not name, and that sooner than spring, pieces would crash upon even this frozen shore. Back in King's Landing, Regency shattered under its own gold. Cersei, freed of father's shadow, crowned herself in arrogance. She stacked councils with flatterers, emptied coffers on ballots for Tommen, rekindled the faith militant to bite the Tyrell rose. Margaery, no meek blossom, slipped daggers of courtesy between each decree until the queen wound tighter than a lute string. Brothels shuddered, sparrows flocked, hunger rhythms returned. In the hush before dawn, Varys' former tunnels rotted unused. Spiders absent, the silk slack. But Littlefinger smiled wider in the void, coins clinking like dice in his palm as he rode north to woo widowed Lady Arryn and her peculiar son. From Lys to the Stepstones, Varys stitched news into net. He heard of Euron Crow's eye claiming the Seastone chair, of ironborn sails blackening western waters, of a red woman on the cliffs of Dragonstone birthing still more shadows. He computed, he refined, he prayed to no gods. Then, in a dust-clogged inn near the disputed lands, a parchment reached him, smuggled inside a hollow pomelo. Aegon had launched early. Golden Company banners already flying above Storm's End, cheers rolling from Tarth to Blackhaven. The boy had not waited for dragons, choosing instead the ancient doctrine of griffins strike swiftly. Varys closed his eyes and pictured Tyrell galleys racing south to defend. Baratheon sympathizers weighing old oaths, Lannister hosts still leaderless beneath Cersei's vanity. Aegon's gamble might shatter the board or seize it. He whispered, "Seven guide you, my prince," though he had never believed in gods, only in frail men trying. As winter deepened, raven wings clogged pale skies, each bird a black syllable in sentences too long for anyone mind. Houses now counted dead, not days. In White Harbor, Lord Manderley rallied fat knights on phrases of vengeance for the Stark blood spilled. The Boltons flayed banners on Dreadfort towers. Queen Cersei's envoy returned half-eaten by winter wolves. Men spoke of others stalking barrows beyond the last hearth. Of children carved from ice, swaddled in human skin. Candle marks before dawn. Wargs dreamed of red comets returning. And Bran Stark, alive only in rumor, rode in those dreams atop a weirwood stag toward a door of moonlight. Varys, seated in a weather-stained room on the Isle of Cedars, felt the tremor reach even here. His cup quivered, not from quake, but from some shared dread that passed unnoticed between stones. He dipped quill and wrote a final round that night. hands steady despite wind-rattling shutters. To Aegon. Hold storm's end, but do not rush King's Landing. Rot will open its gates if you feed the famine. To Daenerys. The boy strikes first. Decide if your fire will temper or consume his steel. To the Martells. Your nephew breathes and wins. Rise now if vengeance still bites. Nahi. To Jon Snow. Wherever the crows fly, winter walks. The lost children of summer must lead. He sealed them with wax the color of bruised apple flesh. As the sun peeled molten gold across the horizon, he felt exhaustion close like chainmail about his shoulders. Years of weaving, of lies told for truths no one else could see. Yet purpose hummed stronger. Somewhere across those waters, a young king lifted a sword that gleamed with the first promise Westeros had glimpsed since Robert's rebellion. Somewhere a dragon queen weighed chains against crowns. Somewhere fevered Tommen whimpered for his mother while the faith sharpened silent knives. The realm teetered on the cusp of calamity and renewal, and Varys, its tireless servant, felt the entire engine shivering beneath his feet like a vast beast rousing from slumber. He called for the one oarsman he trusted and paid double the fee, though coin meant little now. In the distance, gulls wheeled, fracturing the dawn with their raucous cries, as though mocking all soldiers and schemers alike. Varys boarded the waiting skiff, settling amid coils of rope that smelled of tar and old tides, and allowed his gaze to drift westward, toward a land that had forgotten what peace felt like, that had trampled hope beneath armored heels, and crowned children just to watch them die. Perhaps the next crown will fit, he murmured into the breeze, or perhaps it would falter like the rest. But so long as breath remained in any chest, be it dwarfs, bastards, dragons, or spiders, the game endured, offering those willing to play a singular prayer, that somewhere, beyond all ambition and blood, a dawn waited untainted, waiting for the realm to earn it. The skiff's prow cut water. Behind him seagulls pierced the sky. Ahead, storms crouched like sullen gods. Varys steeled his will against the salt spray, tightened his cloak, and sailed into the gathering gray. A single bulb of silk in a sea of turbulent threads. Weaving still, weaving always. Eninka. Ewanjeri. The narrow sea lay silver beneath the first frail light of a clouded dawn, whispering against the hulls of a dozen lean longships, drawn up along the gentle crescent of Shipbreaker Bay. Waves licked barnacles from iron prows painted with the black and gold wyvern of the Golden Company, and gulls circled shrieking overhead as if rousing the new day to memory. On the strand, barefoot in the cold shallows, Aegon Targaryen rested one hand upon the rough timbers of a laddered gangplank and filled his lungs with air that smelled of kelp, tar, and promise. By every reckoning he should have felt exhaustion. He had hardly slept since the Golden Company's ragged banners first filled the horizon off Tarth. But a bright, impossible vigor sang in his blood. When the boy closed his eyes, he could still feel the pitch and roll of the sea beneath him, the surge that carried his lineage out of myth and into sand, damp with the ghosts of Argilaca's broken shield wall. Today was the morning his ancestors began all over again. Behind him, Black Balak's axe sang a wet chord as it cracked the spine of a Stormlander deserter caught skulking beyond the tents. Goldfinches scattered from bramble. Men turned, watched blood mix with foam, then returned to lacing greaves, to sharpening pikes, to praying beneath banners stitched with the sword and torch entwined. The captains of the Golden Company had known harsher dawns on more perilous shores, yet their voices hummed with new ferocity now. Storm's End's pale towers rose only half a league away, an old lion still mauled from siege, its garrison demoralized. The war horn call at sunrise promised surrender talks. Boris Baratheon, grown gaunt and gray, surely recognized the Griffin banner and all it carried. But Aegon could not rely on mercy or fear alone. He must prove worth to every hedge knight and small folk militia between the Rainwood and the Trident. So he lingered barefoot until his toes numbed, letting the tide seep across his ankles like a silent vow. Jon Connington approached at last, mail links clinking in a rhythm Aegon already knew by heart. The Lord's red hair, once proud as a fox pelt, had thinned to a wind-worried auburn. but the commander's spine remained iron. "Your Highness," Connington murmured, folding one fist against his breastplate. "The vanguard stands ready." "Shall I send the envoys?" Aegon nodded but did not yet move. "Is there news north?" "Only that the Lannister lion has lost its roar. Tywin's true grave may be a privy, but the rumors paint him strangled by his own sins. King's Landing quakes beneath that folly." Connington's eyes gleamed hard. "You cut Southron ambition from the knees when you landed here. We push now, and the Red Keep's gates will open for us before the first frost." "Nah." The boy watched gulls dive into breaking surf, thought of the realm's tangled sorrows. He pictured Mother. Elias' laughter he knew only from bedtime tales. But her memory walked these shores with him all the same. "No burning," he said quietly. "No sack. The realm must greet us as healers, not conquerors." Connington touched the pommel of a sword forged in exile. "No company under my command will soil the Stormlands as Tywin once soiled King's Landing. I give you that oath." "And now." Satisfied, Aegon stepped from water to sand. Men thronged about, eager for orders. But he noticed how they watched the pale scar that rimmed his neck, where a Selsail's blade had once kissed him, above Illyria's harbor. Young yet, marked already. Let them see the scar, he told himself. Let them understand what price every throne demands. The envoys rode out, beneath a flag of truce. And shortly afterward, Storm's End's moss scabbed, portcullis rose, with agonizing slowness. Boris Baratheon, stooped, eyes ringed purple from sleepless anxieties, met them in the gateway. What words passed were lost to the wind. But before midday horns blew again, and the massive drum of the outer gate shuddered upward, 10,000 unsullied might have marched through those jaws in silent phalanx, yet only Aegon and a small honor guard entered. Banners furled. By dusk the garrison had bent knee upon the sand-strewn courtyard. Iron nails of vows hammered into weather-cracked stone. Lightning chased clouds far inland beyond the Kingswood, and the Boy King's sigil unfurled atop the drum tower, white fabric snapping in new wind. No siege engines, no starvation, no plague of traitors' heads, only a single day and a single name returned. Yet even as cheers rolled down the battlements, messengers arrived with tidings darker than twilight. The Iron Fleet under Euron Greyjoy had turned Blackwater Bay into a charnel, burning Tyrell galleys moored at Driftmark's wharves, seizing grain barges meant for the starving capital. A splinter fleet of Redwyne warcogs sailed to intercept and lay shattered upon wave-hammered reefs. Meanwhile, Queen Regent Cersei had ordered Grand Maester Pycelle reinstated, only to see him collapse in apoplexy while reciting oaths at Tommen's bedside. Half the small folk claimed poison again, half divine judgment. The faith militant tightened its noose about the city, with dawn raids that emptied brothels and wine sinks alike. And above all, a rumor persisted, ignored by nobles, whispered by sailors, that shards of blue ghost fire danced over ruined keeps along the northern march, raising pale shadows where none had walked for centuries. Winter's old fears, climbing south. Aegon listened to each frantic report in the great round hall of Storm's End. Rain sang upon the high-slit windows, wind booming like distant drums through the cavernous belly of the keep. "We'd have chosen a fractured hour to arrive," he mused aloud. John Connington stood beside him, reading the same maps by the same guttering candle. "Fractures mend," the Griffon replied. "But we must shape the realm's next breath before Cersei's hunger devours it." They planned by torchlight. The main host would march inland to harvest oaths from the Stormlander houses still unpledged, while a snow-white raven would wing north to White Harbor, begging Manderley's ships to convoy grain. Grain Aegon swore to pay with Dragonstone's new minted silver, once black ores were mined. A trio of elephants, gift from the Golden Company's Sarnori allies, would accompany the Boy King on a progress to Kingsgrave to all lords, rumored leaning toward Myrcella's Dornish claim. And above all, ravens must fly to Meereen with letters sealed in royal purple, respectful, urgent, unyielding. "She must not think us rivals," Aegon said, voice tight with the effort of humility. "Only together can dragons and storms unseat winter." Connington's mouth tugged in wry agreement, though the old lord plainly doubted a queen raised amid warlocks and sellsword councils would bend to any plan but her own. Still, the letters left at first light, signed Aegon VI Targaryen, King of the Andals, Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, Protector of the Realm. Varys by then had crossed the summer sea on Illyria's swiftest Drummond, docking in Korth under the name of a Taroshi spice merchant. He traveled by night through pillared thoroughfares heavy with incense, trading rumor for amber coins at perfumed winehouses, until at length he purchased passage on a Shadowbinder's sloop bound for Slaver's Bay. The captain, eyes rimmed red from sleep traded for sail, recognized him not. None did. The spiders shed shapes like discarded husks, as easily as other men changed cloaks. Only the faint smell of lavender remained, and even that he kept masked by cinnamon and whale oil. The voyage south crept past flinty islands, where crimson-garbed priests burned censers on the beaches, chanting of a long night yet to come. Varys listened, and every chant tied another knot in the tapestry of dread he carried. As the sloop neared Meereen, smog rising from charnel pits stained the horizon. Fires still burned in half-demolished pyramids, smoke feathering upward to mingle with dust storms from the red waste. An escort of Unsullied seized the sloop at the harbor mouth. No ship entered without surrendering arms or men to search for hidden slaves. Varys surrendered nothing but coin, and soon sat before Missandei in a receiving chamber lined with red glass. She regarded him with wide, wary eyes. "You call yourself Galario of Tyrosh," she said in the fluid accent of one who spoke more languages than any man could count. "But you smell of the Shadow City." Varys bowed, palms together, humbly. "Smells cling to old robes, my lady, but truth resides deeper." He produced a parchment sealed in purple wax. Aegon's letter. "I come as herald, not peddler." Missandei weighed him, the quirk of her brow a small flicker of calculation. "The queen rests this hour. Walk with me until her petitioners gather." They moved through corridors that stank of lime wash and old blood. Murals telling Valyrian conquests were half-scrubbed from walls. Daenerys allowed neither slave glory nor noble lies to linger. Voices wailed faintly from deeper cells where sons of the Harpy awaited judgment. Above, somewhere in the vast pyramid, dragons rumbled, chains rattling against basalt rings. Varys felt heat, like a furnace in his bones. Whatever counsel he offered here must burn away every last glimmer of self-delusion. At the summit, Terrace Daenerys appeared, sun behind her like a halo, skin flushed golden by morning rays. She wore a simple gown of cream and cobalt, and no crown. Her hair, silver gold, blew across a face neither child nor hardened queen. Drogon glided overhead on a lazy spiral, the scorched scars across his wings mending into dark lace. Two of Daenerys' bloodriders flanked her. Grey Worm loitered a respectful distance back with a knot of Unsullied. "Tyrion has arrived," she said without greeting, her lilac eyes fixed on Varys. "And already my court smells of smoke and riddles." "Then allow me, your grace, to offer clear flame," Varys said smoothly. He knelt. "A king who bears your blood has landed in Westeros. He sues for alliance." "Nah." Grey Worm's hand touched spear haft. The bloodriders scowled. But Daenerys gestured calm. "Another pretender?" she asked. "Not pretender. Your brother's son." The babe the mountain was said to have dashed, spirited away by loyal hands. Her breath caught, just briefly. "If true, why come to me only now?" "Because the realm bleeds, my queen. And because separate, you may each claim a throne, but together you can rebuild it. He seeks neither to outrun your dragons nor to eclipse them, only to stand beneath their wings." Nations. Tyrion, emerging from shadows at Terrace door, laughed softly. "Aegon may be less modest than our spider paints him." His scarred face creased in cynical label. "But perhaps synergy matters more than pride." Daenerys lifted her chin. "If this Aegon reigns in Storm's End, prove his mercy first. Let him free the thralls in those lands. Yes, I am told even Stormlanders keep unfree fishers shackled by debt. Let him banish red priests who sell fear. Then I may believe his talk of peace." Varys bowed again, lower. Your word is command." "No," she said, and in that single opposition Varys heard echoes of Rhaegar's gentle melancholy mingled with Viserys' brittle steel. "My word is challenge. Answer it, or do not return." The spider bowed once more, but inside relief flared. A challenge meant possibility. Across seas of grass, a different challenge brewed in the Westerlands where Lannisport's tidewater markets choked on refugees from the Riverlands. Jaime Lannister, released under long-negotiated king's peace, rode among them wearing mail unadorned, a single white cloak over shoulders unfastened at the throat. He followed rumors of Brienne of Tarth, who had vanished chasing a Stark girl some claimed half-wolf, half-ghost. Jaime hoped to find atonement riding after her, but war refused to loosen its grip. Each village burned by the mountain's men spat on his house as he passed. The Golden Lion meant debt, more than shelter now. And in every smoky tavern, someone whispered that a silver prince, a new Rhaegar, had come to pluck Westeros from the corpse of the old order. Jaime drank sour beer and listened, a dull throb behind his ribs. If Aegon was genuine, what then of Tommen? Poor fragile lad, overshadowed by spiders and thorns. Again he felt the weight of code and blood, and could not decide which fetter chafed more. North. The Winter King's Road blurred beneath riders of House Stark. Robb's banners snapped gray and white above drifts that deepened by the week. Lady Catelyn sat wrapped in sable, watching her sons host slough through knee-deep snow toward Moat Cailin. Ravens sent south had met silence, and that silence smelled of lion plots. In her lap she cradled a letter newly arrived, stamped in purple wax. Aegon's call for ceasefire. She read it thrice, each time noting courtesy, promises of reparation, freedom for riverlords, a seat for the North should they withdraw beyond the neck until winter's break. It seemed genuine, yet memory of Ned cut too deep to trust. She folded the parchment and held it to Robb, who read and stewed. "If it's truth," he said, jaw like granite, "we still have my sisters to free, and father's bones to bury in Winterfell stone." "Bones travel easier than living men," Catelyn murmured. But in her heart, hope's ghost stirred. A dragon might melt iron bars. Far beyond any hope, at a whited-out keep where winds carved shrikes into eaves, Jon Snow found himself Lord Commander. Black brothers stood ragged in rows as Bowen Marsh pressed the staff into his gloved hand. Ravens croaked overhead, restless with omen. Jon accepted the staff, knowing war now ran in three tides: Southern crowns, Iron Raiders, and Northern death on pale horses. When a raven from King's Landing arrived borne by a boy flushed from 10 days' ride, Jon read it in council. Queen Regent begs aid against traitor Dragon Prince and Southern Tyrell treachery. The room erupted with bitter laughter. "They left us to freeze," Dolorous Ed said. "And now call Night's Watch to play Night's nanny." Jon burned the letter. Another raven came an hour later, from a maester who signed only N. Sudler. A cryptic promise of grain from White Harbor, if the watch would accept soldiers bearing a blue-lit torch sigil. Jon frowned. The others walked on blue light too. But hunger gnawed, and he knew the realm's fate bound to the wall whether Southern kings believed it or not. While ravens stitched skies alone, Cersei stumbled down a sharper path. Her hold on Tommen slipped the day a faith militant in studded black seized Sir Osney Kettleblack for testimony. Under lash and holy water, the sellsword confessed to betting the queen, to murder by her order, to a dozen perjuries. The High Sparrow's cell door creaked upon its hinges just enough to let rumor spray through like wildfire. Cersei's attempts to hush the faith only tightened chains. Marjorie, freed of charges after Osney's confession, marshaled Tyrell levies about the capital. Cersei walked into the Great Sept demanding her innocence tried by 7, and found herself locked in Mother's cloister. Tommen wept until the faith swore she might yet return cleansed, but not before trial by conscience. And while the queen paced cell walls scratched with pilgrim prayers, Qyburn whispered of a new champion forged from Gregor's corpse, flesh swollen with secret alchemies. Madness breeding monsters. None noticed various distant fingers loosening bolts from gears that kept such doors latched. Letters crossed seas like comets. In Storm's End, Aegon read Daenerys' challenge, and penned reply. He freed indentured fishers, abolished debtor prison, allowed red priests to preach only beneath open sky as long as they healed wounded of any creed. A Heron Connington rode to showcase these reforms in each hamlet, dragging thrice-painted boards with the text of liberation nailed to them. When word reached Dorne, Prince Doran dispatched Nymeria Sand north with 30 spearmen to examine more closely the truth of young dragons. The sand snake smiled beneath her veil. Her knives thirsted for lion blood, but dragons would serve. Winter deepened. Fields south of the honey wine froze into cracked mirrors. Small folk dug root cellars too early emptied. Storm's End's ravens returned with dark gossip. Bandits in Kingswood now salted slain Tyrell caravans with walnut shells, code for secret Martell allegiance. Aegon frowned at that puzzle, even as he prepared to ride for Tumbleton to secure its crucial bridge. He could not marshal every intrigue. What mattered was the march. He rode at dawn on a silver-dappled destrier, cloak of pale violet streaming. The small folk lining the road gaped, some dropping to knees, others pressing bits of stale bread forward in hope of royal blessing. The boy king blessed every crust and felt his own hunger less keenly for it. Behind him came the Golden Company. Black Balak, homeless Harry Strickland, Strickland's new war rhino snorting steam. 3 elephants plodded among foot ranks, banners streaming from leather-wrapped tusks. The Stormlander houses that had once cursed the false dragons now rode out to join them. Morn of Crow's Nest, House Folly with their red-templed eagle, Estermond's sea turtles. As his host swelled, Aegon remembered tales of the conquerors' march to Old Town. Each mile a new banner folded into dragon-wing shadow. He prayed the shadow ahead was his cousin Daenerys, not Winter's specter. In Meereen, Tyrion finished his second flagon of fermented camel's milk, wiped his mustache, and told Daenerys, "One day you'll thank me for keeping you from marrying an elephant." She scowled. She was weary of his japes. Yet she listened as he argued that Storm's End, once in Aegon's control, gave her a staging ground. Let your cousin soften the 7 kingdoms. Arrive as salvation, not siege. Drogon roared outside the throne room, a sound that shook fresco dust from vaulted ceilings. Daenerys' knuckles whitened on the arm of her ebony seat. If I wait, the realm's wounds may fester into rot. I know rot. She thought of slavers' pits disguised by perfumed gardens. And dragons do not share thrones. History inks that lesson in tombs. Tyrion shrugged. History inks many lessons, some even true. Yet dragons of the same brood seldom burn each other, unless men drive them mad. Her gaze softened. Will you counsel Aegon to yield? I will counsel him to live. Sometimes that involves yielding. The dwarf lifted his goblet. More often it means clever retreat. Leave the lions and roses to bleed each other dry, then unite the banners your ancestors rent apart. Daenerys sighed. So many words, and still I must decide alone. She rose. The myriad braids at the nape of her neck shimmered in torchlight. I will meet your Aegon. On neutral sands, Volantis perhaps. If he seeks alliance, he will come. If he seeks crown alone, he will find only sea. Varys, eavesdropping from a carved lattice, allowed himself one long exhale. The threads pulled taut now. Aegon would leave Storm's End under Connington's steward, slipping to Volantis on a fast galley. Daenerys would cross in secret with her dragons lashed to barges built to bear their weight. 2 dragons, 1 fire, 1 storm, might yet forge chains strong enough to bind fractured Westeros. Or they might char one another to ruin. The spider could do no more but prime paths and prey. At night he dreamed uneasy. Of a wall torn by shrieking winds, whites flooding south while kings argued over melted chairs. He woke in cold sweat, on silk sheets, far from any hearth. Somewhere north, the storm of ice gathered. He penned one final plea. To Lady Melisandre of Asshai, who now counseled Stannis amid Dragonstone's war-scarred halls, urging truce until the dawn they prophesied. He doubted she'd heed a eunuch's plea, but webs required stubborn strands. And so months spun. Hardhome burned under a dull aurora, its cries carried by ravens to Castle Black. Jon Snow led rangers through storm and silence, rescuing what souls he could, yet too many ghouls clawed behind them. Southward, Ramsay Bolton hunted for Davos Seaworths, smuggled grain rafts, nailing flayed fingers to signposts. In the Vale, Littlefinger wed Lysa, then watched her plummet through Moondor mere days after. Sweetling's son Robert saw only birds flying. The High Sparrow set black wine on Cersei's tongue, and she walked her penitent mile naked but defiant, Qyburn's hulking knight trailing silent behind. Then upon the first breath of a thawed morning in early spring, 2 fleets made anchor off the coast of Volantis. Sleek Mirish galleys flying the 3-headed dragon of old Valyria, and sloop-rigged cogs bearing the crowned wyvern of the new king. Between them bobbed a single broad-decked barge moored to floating pylons, built by the Tiger Triarch to host conclaves of spice merchants. Upon that deck, under crimson sails ghosting slack in still air, Aegon Targaryen and Daenerys, storm-born at last, faced one another. The day was quietly radiant, haze of wildfire sky above, sea smooth as hammered mirror. Drogon landed on the barge aft and folded black wings, regarding the curious boy with molten eyes. Aegon bowed, every motion studied but unforced. Daenerys, barefoot, closed distance with the measured grace of desert heat illusion. For a moment neither spoke. Gull cries echoed like distant horns. "You are taller than I imagined," she said finally. "Your eyes, your mother's." He smiled. Nerves flickered but held. "And you carry fathers, they say." "They say?" Her lips curved in fleeting amusement. "You doubt blood? I doubt stories." He glanced at the dragon. "But blood speaks louder than tales." "Indeed." She surveyed the deck. Illyrio mopped sweat beneath silk parasol. Tyrion leaned on a wine cask, grinning like a cat. Connington stiff as a statue across from Dario, balancing knives. "Shall we speak quietly, cousin? Far from counselors and debts?" He nodded, gesturing to mid-deck where a low cedar table waited with figs and water. No guards followed. When they seated themselves, the only witness was Drogon's slow exhale. Aegon said, "I come first for peace. And second?" She watched him with the intensity of a sphinx. "To mend what the usurper and my grandfather shattered." His hand lay flat upon the table. "Steady. Together." She studied that hand, slender but calloused from sword practice. "Do you intend to marry your aunt? Targaryens wed kin to keep dragons pure." Color touched his cheeks. "But I would not speak vows you find abhorrent." She traced condensation on her goblet, thoughts quicksilver. Across the sea a crown waited, yet so too a realm half dead with winter. "The North despises incest," she mused. "The faith militant too. But the North may not survive the winter coming. The faith bends wherever gold shines. Then let our union be forge, not shackle," he said quietly. "We choose how our story tells." Drogon's tail thudded, impatient. Daenerys inhaled, smelled salt, figs, faint cedar. "Cross the world," prophecy murmured. "Dragon has 3 heads." She had 2 dragons left unharnessed, and here sat a potential third, not of scale and wing but of flesh, a dragon of promise. She lifted her gaze, fire flickering behind violet. "Very well," she said. "Prove your mercy upon Westeros. Show me a realm yearning your name. Do that, and I will marry you beneath the roar of dragons." He touched heart to shoulder. "You shall have proof. Come see it with your own eyes." She laughed, surprised by sudden gale of release. "You would lure me across the sea without guarantee?" "Not lure. Invite." His grin was Rhaegar's gentle dream come again. "Besides, you have wings should promise sour." The Dragon Queen rose, offered her hand. When he took it, a hush settled across the barge. Sailors, captains, sellswards all sensed tide turning. Tyrion drained his goblet. Varys tucked quill behind ear, eyes glistening. Connington's shoulders eased, though his jaw still clenched. At dusk, fires along Volantene Harbor flared bright as rubies. 2 dragons banked over water, Drogon and Rhaegal, sending slave galleys rocking in their draft. Beneath those shadows, the captains of the Golden Company and the freedman, hosts pledged blood oaths, forging a single fleet. Somewhere north, Circe shattered a wine flagon when a raven delivered news that dragons and griffins marched in concert. Marguerite Tyrell smiled into her mirror, seeing opportunity in each scale. Jon Snow read a black-winged parchment, bearing twin dragon seals, and felt cold hope slip between tired ribs. And in a forgotten tower beyond the haunted forest, Bran Stark touched a weirwood root and opened his eyes upon a vision. 3 dragons in flight above cracked ice, their wings beating so hard the wind howled with the chant of ancient kings. Winter, however, did not pause for politics. At Eastwatch by the sea, an unnatural storm spiraled into being, seething blue at its core. Ice spires grew overnight across the bay, jutting like teeth from black water. Watchmen on the battlements saw lights flicker within that storm, shapes that moved too purposefully to be wind. Jon Snow ordered signal fires lit, but gales snuffed them. Ravens launched, but each turned to glass mid-flight, falling in shards that rang like crystal chimes upon shale. A hush husked the world. The wall itself groaned beneath the pressure of unnatural chill. Far away, in the warmer gloom of the Red Keep's abandoned dungeons, Qyburn tightened leather straps around the wrists of Sir Robert Strong, once Gregor now reborn, and whispered commandments that hissed like steam over banks of wildfire. Above, Circe donned her black gown embroidered with silver-threaded lionesses, preparing for trial. Her hair cropped, eyes bright with venom. In the Reach, Queen Marguerite dispatched Lady Olenna on swift barge to Dorne, bearing wedding contract and olive branch entwined. Nymeria Sand agreed to escort. Both Roses and Vipers sought shelter beneath Dragon's wing. Neither quite trusted the scales not to scorch them. As fleets massed at Volantis, Daenerys stepped onto the deck of the flagship Windblown and watched carpenters widen the hold to fit Drogon's hindquarters. Aegon joined her at the rail, salt wind twisting pale hair into lions' manes. "When we take Blackwater Bay," he said, confidence tempered by gravity, "the people will shout dragon. But dragons alone cannot feed them through winter." She nodded. 3 heads of dragon. Fire, mercy, and bread. She touched his arm. "Let's hope bread is not devoured first." That night, under a moon half-shrouded, Varys penned his final missive of the voyage. No seal, no signature, addressed simply to the realm I have served. He wrote of dragons coming not as conquerors, but as cure, of winter's claws carving south, of pride's cost. He folded the parchment and tucked it into a small brass cage, ready for a gull trained to home to Sunspear. Dorne rarely killed messengers. Then he leaned upon the rail and let the sea spray salt his lashes. "So many years," he whispered, "so many lies, for this fragile hope." He was tired, but inside him pulsed a small, stubborn spark that refused to gutter. The audacity that men and women might, given one narrow chance, choose light over long night. Dawn returned pink and gold, painting the sails of 2 united fleets. Drums thundered across decks as anchors lifted. Dragons shrieked overhead, wings unfurling against first sunlight like vast once-buried banners. From the quarterdeck, Aegon raised a silver-edged horn and blew a note clear as crystal. Meereenese hulls creaked, Golden Company oars dipped, and the Armada turned west, prow cutting water that shimmered rose. Behind them, Volantis receded into burnished haze. Ahead, old storms waited. On the flagship's aft, Tyrion set quill to parchment once more, drafting decrees for grain tax reforms. Connington barked orders to ridge the shields for incoming gales. Daenerys stroked Drogon's smoking snout and murmured ancient Valyrian lullabies. Across that same dawn, 2 different horns sounded in the far north. 3 blasts, long and mournful, echoing over endless white. Ravens burst skyward. Wind carried their frantic wings southward as if time itself had sprouted feathers to flee, and the wall shivered anew. In King's Landing, Tommen woke from fevered sleep and saw snowflakes melt upon his sleeve. Snow in the capital, rare as contentment. He pressed his tiny palm to cold stone and whispered for his mother. But she lay chained in the Sept's dungeons awaiting the High Sparrow's verdict. Her champions stood silent. Above them, dark clouds rolled inland from Blackwater Bay, heavy with the first true winter storm in 100 years. As snow began to dust the city's tiled roofs, the first sails of the dragon host, pale as bone, dark as blood, breached the horizon beyond Dragonstone's smoking peak. On a balcony of the crumbling fortress, Melisandre lifted her red eyes to brilliant dawn and smiled a slow, secret smile. "The song of ice and fire," she murmured, "begins its last verse." And somewhere over wind-swept tundra, far north of maps, the Night's King lifted an arm of jagged rime toward the faint red smear on the southern sky, as though beckoning. Around him an army of the dead shifted, silent, countless, inexorable, awaiting the signal to march. But in this moment, as dragonfire met dawnfire over a sea churning with uncertain promise, another possibility too burned, that threads woven by countless hands might yet bind the realm rather than strangle it. For hope, like a spider's silk in morning light, is strongest just before the storm breaks.